We have audio, we have streaming, ready to go.
Welcome everyone to the Village of New Paltz Planning Board meeting for August 1st, 2023. I am Zach Bielecki. I'll be chairing tonight's meeting in place of John Linton. There are a number of application reviews we have to get through, as well as some administrative business and public comment. I'd like to start with the administrative business, including the July 18th minutes. Did everyone get a chance to review those? Any updates or changes?
I wrote some comments on it. I stand by them. And I noticed, I think we brought up the topic of using pervious surfaces. And I just want to make sure that's on the record.
Is it on the record? Did you look at the minutes or?
I looked at the minutes and didn't see it there.
Okay.
So I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure it was a topic we brought up.
Um,
I think I thought about it in second thought. Because we got the global warming thing at the last minute, but I think maybe that belongs either there or with the water drainage. I couldn't figure out where it belongs most. But the idea is that the pervious surface is going to allow the water to come through. It's going to be less reflective than asphalt. And it's going to, while there may be an initial cost, higher cost to put it in, it's much lower maintenance and it doesn't get those deep, terrible potholes that the asphalt gets, which is usually what happens when you cut and fill a wet-ish area like that. Or that's what I've seen at the other
Okay.
developments,
Right.
similar developments.
Okay. Well, could I get a motion to approve the July 18th minutes?
So moved.
I guess I would say approve as amended by Rachel's request that
Okay.
comment be included that was not included.
Sure. Yeah. If you want to send that as an email to Autumn, she could add it into the minutes. So motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next, any updates from the village board? Or no updates, nothing from the Ulster County Planning Board? Okay. And anything from the Environmental Policy Board? Have they been meeting?
Yes, we're going to ask for a hose for the front gardens, which by the way were commissioned and for the purpose of people to be able to pick things from them. Right now, there's a whole bunch of spearmint and there's some kind of berry.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to now move on to the public comment section of the meeting. For this section, we'll be accepting comments from the public for any general anything that's on the agenda. We have a separate public hearing for 145 North Chestnut Street. So any comments specifically pertaining to that application could wait for the public hearing. But if there are other comments about other issues, now is the time to voice them. We'd like to remind people to please keep their comments brief to 2 or 3 minutes. And if you could just come up to the table when you're speaking, state your name, and if you live in the village, that would be ideal. So first up, okay. Sure. Why
David
not?
Gilmore, 36 Bonnecue View Drive, lives in the village, member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Asking the question of the board, have you looked at the master plan? Have we updated the master plan? What's going on? Does the planning board advocate for a current master plan? Trying to figure out where is that analysis of proposed 145 North Chestnut Street development against the master plan and the NBR zoning and the other studies of the village. I couldn't find that analysis. was that provided? And so I just would urge the board to think about having a current, up-to-date community master plan. If you have to push the village board for that, I would urge it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to make a comment?
Yeah.
Please
My name's,
step up.
Steve Ford. I live at 5 Newark Road in the village. I want to talk about 184 Main Street. Were any of you guys on the board when the main course was approved? Well,
No.
it was a bit of a fiasco. Bruce presented it as, sorry? No, I'm all right, thank you. It was presented as a takeout catering place, and that's what he got approved for. He lied to the board, and when I spoke to him personally, he said that's all it was gonna be. And then he expanded into a restaurant, and I made complaint after complaint. The village fought him on it and eventually lost. Now he has a full-blown restaurant, and Mill Rock Road is covered with employee and diners at the restaurant. So in relation to 184, I read their parking plan, and I can't remember if it's 42 or 55 spaces that they need. And they include in there metered parking on Main Street, parking on Mill Rock Road, and parking on Van Hyne. How does a private entity use public parking as part of their plan? Can you answer that, or?
This is all in the zoning code. That's part of the parking calculation.
But how can they make that part of their calculation?
Because the Village of New Paltz zoning code says that the number of spaces that a project needs to have, some of those spaces come from public parking.
Okay, so if you count Bruce's parking on Mill Rock Road, we have no parking there. If they're gonna use any of that parking, it's gonna be down at your half of Mill Rock Road. There's no parking on Van Hyne. And those meters are for people to stop and do their business and not for the hotel. It's ridiculous that they can claim those spots. I understand this might be part of the code. I don't know how it is, but it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay. When I asked Bruce, how come he lied to me about his expansion, he said, it's just business. And I think these guys are just doing business also. They just want to do business at our expense, the American way.
Thank you. Next up, okay, please.
I'm Lisa Stewart, and I live at 180 Main Street, which is adjacent. We share a driveway up against the 184 Main Street proposed hotel. I was here for the last meeting, and somebody mentioned that it's in keeping in the village where it's going to be. And if you look at all of the old Victorian houses, and then you look at this new brick rectangle, it's not really in keeping. And to kind of tag on to your parking issue, this past weekend, we had a customer who drove from Brooklyn who parked her car in their parking lot because obviously there's not enough parking in New Paltz. And she was told to move her car or it would be towed. So there aren't any signs there that say no parking. So I don't think it would be legal to tow someone's car without warning them. But if there's already not enough parking, I agree with this gentleman that there's going to be even less parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make comments? Please come up.
My name is Jamie Uhlenbrock, and I live on Plains Road, number 65. And I'm here representing a number of my neighbors on Plains Road, all of whom have particular issues regarding the project for number 11 Water Street, the proposed hotel. We are very concerned about the extremely dangerous intersection that that exists already, where Water Street meets Mohawk Avenue, meets Plains Road, and there's a blind curve. And anyone coming in one direction or the other on that blind curve could actually have a very fatal accident. Anyone driving down Mohawk Avenue to go onto Water Street outbound has to make an extremely narrow turn, and there is a blind curve. So a car coming fast around the blind curve would unfortunately meet the car turning down into Water Street. So those are problems that already exist. There is now a proposal for a hotel that is going to be on that blind curve that has a driveway exiting onto the blind curve, and where the hotel occupies the area of the road is extremely narrow. And it is a very, very busy intersection as it is. And anyone who lives on Plains Road knows you have to be extremely careful. And to have that kind of traffic going in and out on a blind curve is, to me, very unwise. Not only that, but according to the plan, there is a bank of trees that presumably are designed to shield the viewers, the visitors in the hotel from the nasty student house across the road. And that further obstructs the vision. So it will be an absolute nightmare, a traffic nightmare. And there are many things I could say about the plan and about the architect's rendering. I don't want to take up too much time. I think it's extremely ill-advised to have that kind of structure there at that particular place. The issue of parking is completely in sync with what everyone else has said. And there is not enough parking for guests and for staff. And the idea that they should go park up in the rail trail parking lot or in Water Street parking lot, I think is really beyond the pale. It's also very unrealistic for a guest who's going to be spending hundreds of dollars a night to have to schlep their luggage all the way from one parking lot down the rail trail in the snow in the winter to the hotel. So in any case, I won't address the terrible disruption that is going to happen on that intersection for a good 2 years that will make passage with big construction trucks and so on almost impossible. Everyone will have to go out the back end. So it just doesn't seem to me to be a really workable solution to that space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else is here for public comment? Okay, yes, ma'am.
My name is Kim Spillis. I live at 63 Plains Road, Jamie's neighbor, and she pretty much said everything in my feelings. The only thing I'd like to add is I did some research, and it looks like the property had an easement on it at one point where the village could use it. And we've been maintaining that roadway for at least the 35 years I've lived on Plains Road. They did a survey and you could see an orange line and they had curbing where they're actually coming out into the roadway. I read their traffic study. They said they had 22 feet, but I questioned that in certain areas. It doesn't appear that there is going to be 22 feet, which is what Plains Road is, and Mohawk. Pencil Hill is only 18 feet. So I'm very curious about that. If there was an easement, why would they not still honor that for the village to be able to still use that roadway as we've been using it? Their plan doesn't mention anything about sidewalks. How are these people going to be expected staying there to go to Water Street Market or the village? Where are they going to walk? In the road. They can't use the rail trail in the winter. So, I mean, I think that it's very poor planned out, and it is a very dangerous intersection. And the design, I totally agree. The design is not very fitting or historical or fitting to the village. You have the Water Street Market that's beautiful, and then you're going to look at this building that looks very commercial to me. And lastly, I'm worried about the trees. I know they're taking some trees down. I also know that I talked to the land trust folks and they're not giving them that second easement they want for the patio. They notify them that in writing. My concern is that it's only money. They're still going to take down trees and just pay the fine. So that's something else I wanted to alert the board to.
You. Next, yes, sir, you want to come up?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name's Anton Stewart, at 180 Main Street, New Paltz, New York, in the village. My wife and I own, I've given you a few copies if you want to spread them around, but I promise I won't take up too much of your time. I know I spoke at the last public hearing, but I've done a little more research since. So I'll just go through it all. I write to lodge my vehement opposition to this project. My wife and own 180, myself own 180 Main Street, the property bordering 184 Main Street, immediately to the west, which houses our business, the awareness shop on the first floor, and our modest apartment on the second floor loft. Our property is a beautiful old Victorian structure of great character, known to many of the locals as the Purple House. The many corners of our building fill it with light, especially in our apartment's kitchen on the second floor of the eastern elevation. Enjoying our morning coffee in this sun-filled haven is one of our favorite things, as is relaxing on our front porch, watching the world go by. To the rear of our property is a small annex, which together with the adjoining grounds is home to the Church of the Eternal Circle, New York's first federally recognized Celtic Wiccan fellowship. As practitioners of an earth-based religion, the cycles of the seasons and the phases of the moon are extremely important to us, and we gather to celebrate Sabbats, key festivals of the Wheel of the Year, and Espats held on new and full moons. The striking nature of New Paltz's Mohonk Ridge skyline has spawned a flurry of planning applications from developers seeking to construct ever taller buildings, often topped by roof decks, in order to leverage these iconic views to their pecuniary advantage. Unfortunately and ironically, in doing so, the structures themselves greatly detract from the scenic vistas of the village when viewed from a different perspective. When we first learned of the proposal for 184 Main Street, we were immediately taken aback, but realizing that the project would require at least 11 variances in the current B1 business residential zoning, we didn't make a fuss, as we are fairly confident the proposal wasn't likely to come to fruition. However, it would seem that the Jamal family is not without influence, as the village passed local law number 3 of 2022, conveniently eliminating B1 zoning and making the upper part of Main Street B2 core business, which specifically permits 3-story buildings with roof decks while making our own building a non-permitted use. As zoning is no longer an issue, I respectfully ask that the planning board step up to the plate and do what is right by denying this application. A massively tall and, with all due respect to the architects, borderline ugly rectangular box has no place on Upper Main Street. It's completely out of the character with the surrounding structures. The proposed brick facade being suited to the heavily developed section of Broadway in Kingston, rather than like this largely open and verdant area of New Paltz. The huge monolithic construction has a footprint of more than 3,800 square feet, which is frankly way too big for the lot on which it's proposed. Moreover, it will completely overshadow our beautiful property, blocking the morning sun from shining in the windows of our kitchen, and we will never again see the full moon rise above our circle.
I'm sorry, and thank you for your comments, and I think we received these at the last time as well.
No, there's more. I've since taken photographic evidence, which is included in here. May I continue? I've only got a couple more pages.
If you can do it in 30 seconds.
I'll do my absolute best. And there's also the other thing about runoff. So I speak about the violation. It's less than 50 feet away from our property line. The views from the balconies, all they can see is our house. That's it. You know, I took drone shots, actually measured off the plan and height above ground level. The roof deck, you can't, I'm not sure actually why they're doing it. And they've got live music on the roof deck, which makes, you know, the sanctity of any circle we're going to have not happen. Okay, so we talk about parking, but the killer is the roof deck. You can't actually see SkyTap from it. It would have to be, I worked out, at least 66 feet above ground level to actually see it. So all they're going to look at is our property. It's not exactly wonderful. But the other thing that concerns me particularly, I'm not sure if the members of the planning board are aware, but New Paltz has a major storm water runoff problem caused largely by the topography of Main Street, which runs downhill in a westerly direction to the Walk Hill River. The retail plaza to the east of 184 Main Street, together with the subject property itself, are almost completely covered with impermeable surfaces, which creates significant runoff. During times of heavy rainfall, our cellar and yard often flood. On occasion, the wastewater treatment plant on Huguenot Street becomes completely overwhelmed with stormwater, causing it to discharge raw sewage into the Walk Hill River. The proposed development seeks to remove the fence and wooded area to the rear of the property and pave over an additional 1,000 square feet approximately. Not only will this further exacerbate the runoff problem and potential damage to our property, but the significantly increased water and sewer demands of a hotel will add considerable strain to an already overstressed wastewater system. I would urge the board please to read through this. I've put a lot of time and effort into it. If this building is built, it's a slippery slope. Pay paradise, put up a parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else would like to? Yes, Miss. Ma'am. No, please come up to the table. And
Sorry to read.
state your name and your village resident, please.
So I'm Allison Nash. I live at 11 Prospect Street in the village. I first want to thank the planning board for listening to villagers. Oh, so I'm going to be speaking about PB 2308 5 Prospect Street and PB 2309 7 Prospect Street. So first, I want to thank the planning board for listening to villagers' concerns about the plans to demolish the carriage house at 5 Prospect and the barn at 7 Prospect, and for asking the Historic Preservation Commission to review these plans. I urge the planning board to heed their recommendations. New Paltz is a historic place valued by residents and tourists alike who take strolls through the village, appreciating the old homes and barns. At this time, I would like to address 2 related issues. 1, the thorny issue of rentals by the room, and 2, preserving the character of neighborhoods. Renting by the room is lucrative, such that developers are buying old homes in the village and restructuring traditional homes to fit in as many bedrooms as possible. Thus, homes in which families lived become rooming houses, but without a residential manager. Rooming houses are defined in the code as rentals by the room with a resident manager. Rooming houses are not permitted in the R2 district. Rooming houses, in fact, provide more protection to a neighborhood than do rentals by the room without a resident manager. Furthermore, single room rentals do not conform to the definition of what is permitted in the R2 district, 1 and 2 family dwellings. Note that the code specifies that a dwelling is not a rooming house. So in 212.5, the definitions. Family is defined in the village code as 1 person or 2 or more persons related by blood, marriage, or adoption, or not more than 3 persons not necessarily related by blood, marriage, or adoption, who live together in a single dwelling unit and maintain a common household. Although the site plans describe 5 and 7 Prospect as 2 family homes, a close look at the plans tell a different story. For number 5, each of the 7 bedrooms has its own bathroom, clearly indicating that like number 7, the building will be single room rentals. People living together as a household do not each have their own bedroom, bathroom, suite, nor are rents paid per bedroom. There is often a shingle outside number 6 across the street from 5 and also owned by Sam and Rick, stating room for rent. The most recent tenants for number 7 Prospect were 5 students in the SUNY New Paltz soccer team, clearly more than 3 unrelated people. They had to move out because the landlords wanted all 6 bedrooms rented. Their current plan is to almost double the size of number 7, which will expand what is already a non-conforming use. Why are rooming houses not permitted in the R2 district? They change the character of neighborhoods by increasing nuisance factors. Noise levels are increased. Yards are converted to parking lots, and as each of the numerous bedrooms requires a parking space. Short-term tenants do not become part of a neighborhood. In contrast to long-term residents who know one another and one another's children and participate in village life, volunteering in the myriad of board, committees, and services that support the running of our community. On Prospect Street, one by one, homes of long-term residents have been transformed to short-term rentals by the room. Taken together with the large single rooms rental structure Sam and Rick already have transformed, their current plans for number 5 and 7 would create a cluster of such buildings dominating the upper portion of the street. Once traditional homes are renovated to create rentals by the room, they rarely, if ever, go back to family homes. Sam and Rick have been part of the Prospect Street neighborhood for many years. Many of us are customers at their gas station. Some of us spoke to the planning board in support of the expansion of their gas station business. I am hoping they can contribute to the village and to their Prospect Street neighbors with 1 or 2 family homes that conform to code as well as to the character of the neighborhood. Thank you. And I will submit this to Autumn. And then there was the Historic Preservation Commission had a meeting about this, and somebody submitted something, Phil Schmidt, and he asked me if we could submit it to this. So I don't know if somebody wants to read it aloud. I should just give it to Autumn.
Yeah, if you could additionally give that to Autumn, but I think we already got their comments.
Okay,
To the HPC and their comments person.
okay. So you don't want it. I'll just give it. You do what you want. And then one of my neighbors, I haven't had a chance to read this. Bless you. He just on my way here handed me this to give to board members, so I will do that and give a copy to you if there's enough. So you can pass these out. That's from Terry Dungan.
Right. Yes, we got his comments as well. Thank you. Okay, next public comment, please. Yes, sir, in the back.
Hi, thanks for your time and your patience and your service. My name is Will Hermes. And for the last 14 years, my wife and I have owned a house on Center Street in New Paltz, which is downhill from 180 and 184 Main Street, where the projects are going on. I'm glad when I see the neighborhood bringing in new businesses that promise to enhance the quality of life and enhance the character that makes New Paltz an appealing place to visit. I'm happy to see quality new restaurants. I have no problem in theory with ostensibly scaled small hotel, though we already have 2 large hotels perched just outside of town, and a serious traffic problem that I fear this project might contribute to. It's not an abstract problem for me. In 2020, I was hit by a car on 299, about 5 doors down from where this project has been proposed, in broad daylight, crossing in a clearly marked crosswalk on my way to town on a weekday morning. I'm still struggling with disabilities as a result of that accident. And frustrated with the fact that there isn't better traffic control on this road, which apparently is due, as I understand it, that it's a state-controlled roadway, and we're limited with like the type of modifying crosswalks or traffic signal additions that might help address this problem. I know I'm just one of many pedestrians and cyclists who have been injured in traffic accidents on this road in recent years. So I'm concerned about the traffic issue here. And I'm concerned about the scale of this project, especially given the small footprint of the lot, which I've walked past and through many times over the years, and seems like too little room to accommodate what the developers have in mind.
And just a couple more paragraphs, I'll keep it short. In addition to the traffic issues, I share my neighbor's concerns about the noise, a rooftop bar overlooking a residential neighborhood. I know really well how sound travels on that block onto Center Street. I've been living there 14 years. I can occasionally hear gatherings in the rear of the awareness shop, but they've been super good neighbors. They're conscientious. They keep things at a reasonable level. They never run late into the evening. I'm also worried about the issues which you've heard about runoff and drainage on Center Street, which I also know very well. Center Street becomes a rushing river. In fact, did just a few days ago during heavy rains because of the underground stream configurations and the problems with runoff there. Many of us deal with floodings in our yard, in our basements already, and I'm concerned a project of this scale is going to exacerbate the problem, create new problems. I trust you will all take a super close look at this project. Actually, 2 building projects, which coincidentally and simultaneously are being built back to back. There's one on Center Street, a house being knocked down, and then this hotel restaurant development. They're back to back. So I know that you'll make sure they're keeping it within zoning laws, and I hope you'll consider the impact that they'll have on the residential street, given all the concerns and information we presented tonight. Projects that seem potentially inappropriate for a residential neighborhood of families with young children, retirees, SUNY professors, and students. So thanks for your efforts. Thank you for hearing me. And thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Checking this out.
Would anyone else here make a public comment tonight? Okay. Seeing none, and anyone online? Okay,
Most of these people are related to the applicants who are here.
okay. Great. In that case, I would like to close the public comment portion of the meeting. And
Make a mention of that.
and before we move on, there was one other item of administrative business that needed to be taken care of. Last week, we learned the news that our former colleague, Dennis McGee, who served on the planning board for many years, passed away. And we'd like to just take a moment of silence to honor his memory. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Thanks.
So next, I'd like to move on to the public hearing portion of the meeting. As stated on the agenda, the public hearing for 184 Main Street is still open and has been adjourned until our August 15th meeting. So we will resume the public hearing for 184 Main Street then. Obviously, all your comments are still being compiled and will be, added to those that file. So the other public hearing for tonight is PB 2302, 145 North Chestnut Street. Does anyone wish to make a comment specifically on this application?
Signed off for the hearing.
Okay, yes, please come in. Please.
Will I have to observe a strict time limit?
We would appreciate, keeping your comments relatively brief within 4 or 5 minutes. Yes.
Try to stick to 5 minutes. My name is David Gilmore, resident of the village for 20 years, 36 Bonnecue View Drive, former village planner, designed and implemented the first NDR project, 30-year urban planner, member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and former executive board member of the New York Metro chapter of the American Planning Association. Also have a background in public health, always concerned about climate and resiliency. I wanted to ask, is this application complete? Have you accepted it as complete?
I'm not sure what.
The application is accepted as complete. So I'm going to make a number of comments regarding the design, the density of the site, and its transit and pedestrian orientation or lack thereof. My concern with density, if I didn't say that, and the resiliency at the site. As you probably know, the governor has declared that housing is a critical need throughout the state. And I would submit that this application is not dense enough. When I look at this application, I applaud that there's housing within this application. However, I seem to notice that there's more coverage by surface parking than there is by building. So let me just start with my concern with a transit and pedestrian orientation in the design. Your own engineers are criticizing the fact that you don't provide for access management and 2 curb cuts on New York State Route 32 North. Why? Why are there 2 curb cuts on Route 32 North? Did they consult the resident engineer, and the resident engineer went with this? Moreover, the building orientation is so tight to the street where the New Paltz Loop bus currently parks. There is no pedestrian, there is no transit stop at the site. There's hardly a transit orientation. And for that matter, I would submit there's not a pedestrian orientation. Your engineers are also critiquing the need to have a flush intersection with Bonnecue View Drive. There's no crosswalk on Bonnecue View Drive. There's no sidewalk on on Route 32 North. There's no sidewalk in the frontage until you get opposite the next site to the south, the car wash, where that pedestrian right-of-way is offset from 32 on the east side. But like, there don't seem to be sidewalks all around the property. There's 2 curb cuts with an auto-oriented design. Look at the standards of the MBR district. Where is your transit and pedestrian orientation? You should have 1 curb cut. You should eliminate the whole northerly sprawl. This is a sprawling site. This is no zero place. This is not a good design. You should eliminate the whole northerly access driveway. You should leave a easement to the property to the north so that you can get village scale growth and pedestrian scale growth in this area. Moreover, I would submit that you should set this building back 10 more or possibly 15 more feet. You've got no massing orientation to the lit up car wash next door. And for some reason, before you even finished your hearing, there is no parking on Route 32 North. There's a highly successful design with bicycle access along the frontage of Route 32 as you head south on the frontage on Zero Place, and there's parking in front. Someday this is going to be a more urban and denser village. Provide parking on Route 32 North. You're taking the whole circulation design, and the way that it's presented in the application is that it's contingent on the highway engineer's approval. So do a more robust, more progressive design for the traffic and circulation design. I submit there should be a bus stop on Route 32. I don't understand even why and how the application could be complete when there's not bicycle parking provided on the site. Is that inside the building on the site plan? Because I didn't see any of the compliance with the bicycle parking standards of the village.
I believe there is.
You think there is bicycle there on the site plan that I'm looking at that was submitted today? There's no details for any bicycle racks. There's like a robust bicycle parking standard for the village.
Fair.
And I just don't understand how, if I drive on my bicycle, not in my auto to that site, where should I put my bicycle? I didn't see that design. So I would submit that the purpose of the MBR district is to have wide sidewalks. I think it's in the standards for the district. Provide wide sidewalks, civic space fronting the street as part of human scale and pedestrian oriented design. Fit a transit stop on Route 32 for your loop bus that the village is paying so dearly along with the town for, and hardly anybody's riding. When you get the density, and I mean, there should be, I submit there should be more reserved space for future density. But I'm concerned about the circulation layout. It's all like parking. It dominates the massing of the building. So in terms of transit and pedestrian orientation, I also would recommend that it should be a 6-foot wide sidewalk with ample tree fenestration and shading to deal with urban heat island effects. Okay, so I'm going to jump around for a different topic. I'd love to talk to you if you have questions to me about pedestrian transit-oriented design. I've talked about bicycle, transit stop, auto circulation, including too many driveways and not a flush design with Bonnecue View Drive, which is a relatively high volume street. But I'm saying more units, more density on this site, more places for people to habit, to live. This design gives the standard 30-foot setback for the stream in the rear. And then there's asphalt for I think it's over 100 feet until you get to the building fenestration on the west. I submit that you don't need this much parking. You need and that's part of having a pedestrian-oriented design, and that you could have a stronger, more robust vegetated stream buffer to protect tributary 13. Moreover, if this is a complete application, what is being provided for recreation design? Where is the cost estimate of the value of the easement that's being provided to the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail, which you should assert should be made? That connection to the rail trail is essential. A person who lives or works at the BOCES, or I think better, a person who works at my market shouldn't have to walk all the way to Zero Place to get on the rail trail. A grid of rail trail and access would provide a direct access to the rail trail in that location, and that's what they're proposing. But how about a value of the easement? How about a design of the bridge and the demonstration of feasibility for that bridge? Because isn't that the recreation that they're providing? I don't see any recreation on site. Or are they donating to your recreation fund? And then,
David, with all due respect, this is a pretty long set of comments.
Yep, I have substantial comments, and I would like to make them in writing.
We've already been through quite a bit of public comment in the open forum. This is a hearing that we've got to have a lot of
Right.
time for others too. If you have, I'd like you to try to finish with the points you've made. And if you have
I'd like to
additional,
make additional comments and maybe you could tell
Submit them
me,
in writing to this board.
I'd like to make my comments verbally if I may. I know your time is valuable, but if I may make public comments, I would like to do it that way. Maybe you could tell me how much more time I have?
2 minutes.
So I would submit that you should elevate this building more. You should get this to 6 feet above base flood elevation, maybe more, so that this is likely to be an adaptable climate resilient site. Regarding sewers, I'm concerned that this is a force main, essentially a sewer connection. It's not a sewer loop. I don't believe that there's sewers to BOCES, and there's contingent plans about 137 North Chestnut. Why is there not a requirement for a full sewer connection being provided to the pump station, with the pump station upgraded on the east side of North Chestnut Street? The design that your engineers are consenting to is nonsensical for the long-term capital maintenance and fiscal stability of the village. Finally, besides the stormwater design and in terms of resiliency, what about a green roof, or in lieu of that, a white reflective roof that is not going to absorb heat during and exacerbate urban heat island effects? But the facade itself does seem uninspiring. I'm disappointed that the Village Historic Preservation Commission, who put this through, put the Zero Place project through so much review, just sort of consented to this design and didn't seem to have a lot of questions. So I've talked tonight about transit and pedestrian orientation, including in alignment with the NBR standards. I think that you've got over coverage by parking, that this is not a climate resilient design. You should promote alternative analysis on the facade, really four-sided design. I would submit that the stormwater management design really doesn't do a lot to manage the peak runoff curve on the site. And I guess those are the gist of my comments. I'm certainly happy to try to think, solid waste management. What is going on with space for recycling, composting, future waste stream management? I didn't see any of those designs on the site plan either. But especially, I guess I'm really concerned about the fiscal impacts on the village from just allowing them to connect a force main and then have it contingent on the design at 137. Why aren't we providing for a robust looped sewer system so that the village can grow? I feel like this area has been treated like a stepchild compared to all the attention that you're providing in other parts of the village. Sorry to, if I come across as harsh, I know that I do have strong comments, but I just really think that in some ways you need to stipulate a lot to make this a better site plan. Thank you. Oh, and I would urge you to keep the hearing open. Respectfully, I would like to see the hearing open longer, including so that I could review the county planning comments.
Okay. Thank you for those detailed comments, and we would greatly appreciate if you could put some of those in writing and provide those to us.
Did he see the engineer's report on the sewer, on the?
I don't know.
It's available.
What I saw was their own proponents engineer. I think there's probably 1/3 of a page on the sewer design. I looked at your transport engineer's analysis. I didn't see your sewer engineer's analysis. I can go after that if I should. There is your sewer engineer's analysis.
Yes, yeah.
Is that published?
Was that published? Oh,
Not
fine.
published.
Okay, so it's,
Yeah.
the engineer did look at it and they did find some problems. But we're not allowed to make that public yet.
They have provided a preliminary report, that would be a final report.
So it's almost like a public hearing. My single most important comment rises to the design of the sewer and a village scale design where they're paying their fair share, doing what's right with the sewer, but that's not accessible to the public.
Well, not yet.
Not yet, but then please hold the hearing open so that we can comment on it.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So remind me, do we make the motion to adjourn the public hearing until the next meeting at this time, or is that during the?
Yeah, if no one else wants to speak.
Okay. Does anyone else want to speak about 145 North Chestnut Street tonight?
So I'd like to discuss and respond to some of the comments that Charlie made.
Okay, so
During your
actually,
time,
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no one else, then I'd like to have a motion to adjourn, keep this public hearing open and adjourn it until what would be the next meeting that we would have to discuss? Should we do it that meeting? Is there going to be?
Well, by then we'll have the.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, sure.
Great. So I'd like to get a motion.
Did you say you were adjourning the public hearing until August or September? That's what we're deciding. So there is the first meeting in September, that one's the one that's canceled? Okay, so it'll be September 15th or
It's not
19th?
Something.
If it was to be placed next month?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. Somewhere around there. But I believe that if there's more stuff coming in, then we could have this on the August 15th agenda. So I'd like to get a motion to adjourn this until the public hearing until August 15th.
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Okay, on then to application review. So our first application for tonight is PB 2308, 5 Prospect Street.
Thank you.
Hello. So I'd like to just start, if you could just go through your latest missions and any changes that have been made since your last meeting.
Yeah, the last time we were here, there was a request to provide additional exterior elevations of the building, so we've done that. We've supplied those. That was the essence of our updated submission.
Okay, so that single sheet was the,
Yes, that was the addition, because we already had a front elevation with our other documents, so we added the sides and rear.
okay, I think so. There were a few issues we noted that I think also came up the last meeting. We need a more detailed utility plan for our engineers and public works department to review.
Was that for water and sewer or what?
Yes. Water, sewer.
Right, we've been in contact with Blue apparently, and he was looking into it. No,
I sent him the site plans and there are no engineering details on there for him to refer to. So
oh, I thought that had already gotten worked out with them. All right,
So,
well,
yeah,
I'll contact him.
that would be-
Okay, sure.
So
Before we leave that topic, can we just be clear? So we need a utility plan that shows water, sewer, and stormwater for the site. Is that what Blue is looking for?
Yes, whatever they can provide in relationship.
Okay.
mhm.
That was the referral from the previous.
Next, there was still a concern with the compatibility with the character of the neighborhood. And so I'm not sure that these elevations are really illustrating the whole site and how it will look in context. I mean, I'm not sure if the board has had a chance to take a look at them, but seems like it would be helpful to have, I don't know, more of a rendering of what the site would look like from the road, or you know, just some more details on the elevations, such as like you know, heights and marked and.
Do you want to know about materials and those type of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think external materials, any lighting that is going to be included.
One thing I would ask is, I know that you saw the memo from the Historic Preservation Commission. I think you had a chance to speak with someone from the commission.
Yeah, I've been talking to George.
Good.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that while it's not a requirement that necessarily that the building get a complete review, they did make the review of the historic significance or insignificance, I guess is generally the finding. But I'm interested in whether you'd be willing to work with HPC on some of these design questions, just so that the resultant building, if built, were to have some of the things that are being referred to as concerns by the community, by the neighborhood, ideas around, you know, finish, color, you know, dimensions and roof line variability, things that would make a building that's sitting in that pronounced location in a community that has some original, you know, primarily original architecture, could just have a better fit than maybe the current design has.
We have no issue talking to them and design, but we already in stage one approving the site plan. Then we'll work on, you know, after see the size and whatever, then we'll work with them, the color, what kind of materials, windows, doors. I have no problem with it, but George wants some plans to see an approved site plan, what we're gonna be building. So far, we're still in dispute what we put in on. So that's you know, after we have an approved site plan, I will work with them, you know, material, doors, whatever we need to do, that's not an issue.
But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong in terms of what you're asking for, but I think we're not gonna be able to approve a site plan until we have those finished. But what you're asking, I think, is, can you have a sense that the existing code is being met?
Exactly.
Do you have is the general use that you're trying to propose something that you then want to work on the design elements for?
100%.
There won't be an approved site plan, but it might
100%.
just be kind of the opportunity for one more round of feedback until you go back to that, because that's what's going to allow it to be.
Which is, we have no issue, as we say, said the right word. I need just to see what I'm working with. And that's where the issue is.
I don't know if I'm, because I'm so new, so anybody can cut me off if I'm going in the wrong direction. But I would like to know more about what will be going on in the interior of the buildings. Are these really going to be homes for family, or is it going to wind up being a whole lot of people? And I don't know if there's a better way to ask the question. I do care about the design, but I also care about, I know if I lived in that neighborhood, which I don't, if I lived in that neighborhood, I would want to know that I was having more families than student housing. I mean, I have nothing against students, and I'm happy for them to live in places. But I don't know if this is an appropriate question to ask. But I guess if I'm thinking in a single
sentence what the question is this really going to be family occupied housing, or is it in fact going to be single room occupancy?
We proposing a 2-family, 3-bedroom apartment. If we got a family willing to come in and pay the right price for it, we don't have a problem. I have 3 prospects and I have 3 families living in there, and they've been there forever. But, as you say, if everybody discriminating against students, who's gonna house these students?
Well, I would hope.
Yeah, if we get 3 people willing to rent it together, I write 1 lease. I don't write separate leases for rooms. So they live together and they have 1 lease. But we are in favor of families because I don't have to deal with it every year. They come in, they stay. I have Luther living in my building for 17 years now. And I'm sure everybody knows Luther. I have no issue with him. Even his rent, he's still paying what he paid almost in the 90s. So we not against families. If everybody give you that impression, they are wrong. I'm all for families, and I'm not in business to rent every month or 6 months. I have enough to deal with at the gas station to deal with rental on a monthly basis, which is I want to correct the record. So we are all for families.
And we did have a zoning code review, right? And that was determined that this plan does comply with the zoning as a 2-family residence.
Yeah.
I didn't see the HPC memo. I was looking for it. What was, can someone give us a summary of their response or something?
To be honest with you, I read it. Even my attorney read it. I don't know what they're trying to say.
Okay. That makes both of us the woman.
Yeah, it's in the email that was sent with the number of documents that were received. I think the conclusion of it would be they were charged with evaluating the historic significance of the carriage house and barn. And they did not determine that the carriage house and barn has historic significance. They share that the impression of the style of the proposed building does not consider the historic character of the neighborhood nor complement existing structures and would not contribute to the visual characteristics of the existing streetscape. So I think simply put, there was the recommendation to this board that while the buildings aren't historically significant and therefore there's not a requirement for them to be preserved according to the village code and the Historic Planning Commission's charge, what they did share is that the current visual design that's been presented is one that would not complement the character of the neighborhood and fit in a way that we might ask the applicant to consider.
Which is, we are gonna work with George.
Yeah.
I think Thursday I'm meeting with him.
George Seafried, who's a member of that.
Which is whatever we need to do, that's not an issue. As I say, I just want to know what I'm working. That's all what I'm asking.
Okay, were there any other? The board wanted to raise? There were a few other issues that wanted to just make sure we talked about. Okay, so we did look at the HPC memo. Talked about that it complies with zoning and community character. I think one of the concerns that the neighbors brought up was that the current carriage house or barn back there.
Is this on 7 or?
That's 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is 5.
So, yeah. Sorry, I was just getting confused. So right. Separate things, yeah. So one of the other things that would be useful for us to have, I think, is some indication of like landscaping and landscape plan. I think that would help us visualize project and also maybe put some of the neighbors' concerns at rest. We're still missing some documentation of the driveway easement. I believe.
I thought that's solved already.
What we said was that we didn't think you needed to change the lot for the driveway, but we are gonna need some documentation of that easement. Like the deed or the.
It's on the deed of 3 Prospect.
Is that submitted?
It's not submitted. The village has it, and I looked at it in the building department. And I could get a copy, it's no problem. It's a recorded easement on 3 Prospect deed.
Okay, well, we need to have that in our.
That's
files.
no problem.
Great.
That's no problem.
Okay. Excellent. So that would be easy. And I think that once we have those items, then we can set a public hearing. Already classified this as type 2. It's already been referred to the Ulster County Planning Board. So the next step would be.
So you encourage me to go on with the meeting on Thursday with George?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I think our recommendation would be to use that time with the entire commission. I know that George has been particularly
He
generous
wants to
with
come
his
to the
time.
site, him and Mike, and we're gonna meet there. Which
One of
is-
us might do a site visit too. I would.
100%. And as I offered everybody, I have the keys. You're welcome to come on in.
Over there.
So I think that, but I think when we're asking for the landscape plan, we're asking for more rendering and stuff. Those should represent the design that is the result of the work you're willing to do with the commission. So we don't want to
Yeah.
get something generic again and have to send that back.
That's
Do that work, and invest that time and energy and collaboration with the HPC. And then when you bring that one back, I think that could be the one that we then would agree to set a public hearing around.
That's
If
fine,
it,
sure.
if it meets this board.
You got it. That's easy. Okay.
Did you read the other letter from Terry Duncan?
No.
You should read that one.
About what?
About your project.
Which one? Which
About
project?
About number 5 and number 7 Prospect Street.
I read something he was talking about 3 Prospect. I don't know why he brought up the subject 3 Prospect.
It's in the record, right?
Yeah, it's in the record. I got that email.
All right.
To arrange a visit, should we do that directly with the applicant? If we want to, if somebody on the planning board wants to join the HPC consult?
It's not set up yet. He needs me to call him back and confirm.
Right.
I mean, Autumn, do you want to address Terry Dungan's letter and some of his claims? Right.
Sure. So on the 5 Prospect, I think,
This is about 7.
well, he sent one on each.
Okay.
So on 5 Prospect, I think, he, in his opinion, it would be more preferable to renovate the building rather than replace it, which, is not something that the board is going to enforce, but that's his recommendation. And I did note, though, that he raised some legal standards that were not applicable for this board because they were for a zoning variance, which isn't what this board is
I see.
considering.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great.
Amy.
Yep.
So in that case, I think we can move on to 7 Prospect Street. The 2309. So this is going to be an addition onto an existing single-family residence. Converted to single-family residence. So I think there are some of the same issues with this one. Having having a utility plan with water, sewer, stormwater that we can send to our engineer is going to be important. I also still felt like the elevations were not showing the entire building. They're cut off and they're not showing the existing house, I guess.
Yeah, and again, we weren't proposing any changes to that, so I mean, I can fill in photographic documentation or what, I don't know what would be acceptable to the board.
I mean,
I mean, do you
I
want,
think
do you want us
something
to
that-
draw up the whole existing conditions of I mean, which we can do, we weren't proposing any changes to it.
Right, I think that would help us assess the whole site and understand what it was going to look like as a completed structure though.
Yeah.
So
I think
I
building
do
a
think-
building bigger than the building is a proposed change to the building. So I think it would be
Potentially bigger.
valuable to see it in its entirety, in a concluded shape and form,
right,
as many ways as possible, actually.
Well, to speak to the comment that we had received from Mr. Dungan was about a concern about having two houses on the property, which is actually not what this is. This is one house on the property, but I think it's important to show the bulk of that one house in its entirety, because that's what you're allowed to build, not a second house.
And that's what we
Yeah,
propose.
yeah, but we're
which
not
is,
able to really see it without the drawing of the whole thing.
So they need to do more job. Okay.
yes, so that's going to be important. And the HPC also sent a preliminary response regarding the barn. What was their comment on that? Let's see.
I don't think they found the barn to be,
Okay, that was
they may have still
Also
been
none
checking
of-
some things, but they didn't think it was historic significant.
got it. Well, one thing that the public did bring up was the buffering and the fact that that barn currently provides something of a buffer and blocks some sound. So I think it would make sense to include some landscaping in the site of that barn that would provide some amount of buffering. And so if you could also include the landscaping on the site plans to show that would be helpful.
Sure.
And none of the mulberry trees are coming down, correct?
No, we're
We're not
not
cutting
proposing any tree removal at all.
No trees coming down.
Good question, Zach. Just in terms of what you were saying is kind of, you want to know what you're working with before you go before you go to a process of trying to design it within the character of the neighborhood. Knowing what you know about the limitations to more than 3 individual renters that are not related in the house. Would you consider, and this would be ultimately an enforcement issue, because if you build it, would you consider a reduction of the new construction to a 3-bedroom so that you're not at risk of that enforcement issue, which is that having 4 individuals renting rooms independently, in my understanding of the law, would be prohibited in that structure. So I'm sort of just, I'm not imposing the code, because the code says you can build a 4-bedroom structure as the addition. But the question is, if you're aware that you're only able to rent 3 independent rooms, whether that's a consideration you would take into account.
As I told you before, what we rent, we don't rent individual. The room, we rent them as group people coming.
Right.
Most of them are either boyfriend and girlfriend, or a boyfriend and a boyfriend now, or a girlfriend that we don't know what type they are, but they are in a group of people, and most of them, they either related or they have some kind of a relation. That's how they live together.
But there could only be 3 people. I think that.
Yeah,
what you're
that is my
getting at.
question. And I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
Sam. You hold things on, you typically hold these under one lease, is my understanding.
Yes.
And that's even the case. It's that question, or that part of the code about what defines a family, living in a family, it even applies if it's one lease. So if it's one lease, but the 4 people are totally unrelated, or they're even friends, which don't meet that criteria of blood, adopted, spousal, whatever the criteria says, then it's a code violation. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not imposing it on you because what you're saying is our intent is not to violate the code. Our intent is to rent within the requirements of the 4-room building. And but what I'm also saying as a person who wants to make sure that things being built are code compliant, that you consider the fact that if you rent it to 4 people, even if they say we're friends and we're dating, they're 4 independent people that don't meet the requirement, and you could be up against a code enforcement issue.
I understand.
Okay.
Back to clarify,
Yeah.
the Historic Preservation Commission didn't really come to a conclusion about the barn. They are still looking into it, but they didn't initially find any.
What I understood from George, he looked at it, he said structurally unsafe.
Yeah,
It has to come down.
that's my understanding.
It's structurally unsafe. It has no foundation.
Right.
That's how it was built, these things.
Mhm.
So then I think for both of the projects, we need a utility plan and a landscaping plan and more elevations once you have the details of
Right.
the structures more refined.
And I'll take the input from George and Mike and see what kind they have in mind. And we'll put it on the plans.
Will the visit that we're planning be for both properties?
Yes.
Yes.
This is this parking, the number of cars that live in the houses.
So the site plan does show a number of parking spaces that meet the requirement for the number of bedrooms. Is that what you're referring to?
Guess so.
Okay.
As I said, I'm, uncomfortable even speaking up, but I'm also
No, yeah,
questioning.
please ask.
I don't know how to phrase the questions so that they're coming out in the way that conforms with,
But your question's about
how it's
parking and
supposed to
its
be.
compliance, and I get it.
So
We
if
get
you
it.
have people, three people living in the house or part of the house, whatever it is, that it's, then though there would be 3 parking
We
spaces.
have 6 and 9. We have enough parking.
The code actually specifies that there need to be 2 parking spaces per bedroom in
Wow,
residential districts, this residential district.
my house would be.
Per bedroom or per?
No.
unit?
One per bed.
Per unit, okay, 1 per bed. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
up to 3 bedrooms, I think, and then 1 additional if you have more bedrooms, is my understanding.
Okay, yes.
So we'll meet that code.
So that was, okay, I think I made a mistake putting that on the list. That was already addressed.
Okay.
And that's also in the building inspector review.
Yeah.
that element.
I'm sorry, what's that? The number?
The number of
apartments?
parking spaces, whether it's adequate for the proposed.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I believe that is everything for this. And once we have these items, then we can set the public hearing for the project as well.
Sure. Thank you.
And if there's a site visit that we can join, someone from this board might be available.
I have your number.
Well, let's
Would you
make
like
sure
me to
everybody,
call you?
make sure it circulates to everybody.
So you're talking about the Thursday meeting or the meeting after?
How about the meeting that might have the opportunity to meet with HPC, George and others to review?
Because the message I got from him, 12 o'clock Thursday. I'm gonna confirm him tomorrow. If you don't mind, I'll text you. Okay.
And I can let the board know. via email.
And I believe Lee will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on our agenda, PB 22-10, 11 Water Street.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
All right.
Nice to see you all.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, could you please introduce yourself so we could get that on record?
Sure.
My name is Ryan Giuliani. I'm one of the owners, developers on the project.
Hi, Frank Pellicciotto, traffic consultant for the project.
Great man.
Hi, Solomon Latham. I'm with Men Buck and Eggers, representing our engineering firm.
Kim Hoover from Hoover Architecture. I'm the architect.
Thank you. Okay. So,
I'm just sorry. Jesse is on Zoom. My business partner, Jesse Halliburton, is on Zoom here, listening in. And I don't know if he has the ability to talk, because I know he's going to.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, Jesse Halliburton, also developer. And then Rich Olson is also here on Zoom as well. Our attorney.
Our land use attorney.
great, very good. So I was hoping we could start with just a, high level overview of the most recent changes, and we can go from there. Sure. Any changes to the site plan or traffic?
So yeah, yes, well, I guess we were tasked in the last time before we were in front of the board, come up with some solutions regarding, well, one of the things was taking the water main off of our property, which we were able to accomplish by changing some things around within the site plan itself. Then also dealing with the fire chief and the highway superintendent, there was some questions about access of the vehicles getting onto our property, and asked us to come up with a solution for what is called a mountable curb in front of our property, rather than the landscaped area that we had, which we made adjustments to the site plan as well. We went back to both departments and showed them our solutions, which they in turn signed off on or gave approval of what they were. Now, maybe you can jump into it.
Sure.
I know you were going back.
Sure. So the biggest change, we previously had the parking on the, basically along the roadway frontage.
Right.
And in order to get the fire truck in, so we coordinated with the fire chief, he provided the specs for the largest vehicle that would need to access the site. And then what we did was, and I saw it handed out, there's a simulation on that plan right there that shows the turning maneuvers for that vehicle. That vehicle that we simulated is actually a little bit larger than the largest fire truck that is required to get into the site per the fire chief. Got a 20-foot wheelbase as opposed to a 21-foot wheelbase. And you can see that it would circulate with a right turn in and then exit the property after being on it. Because of that turning radius requirement, we had to flip the parking. So the parking now is up against the building rather than along the street frontage. That's the most substantive change that came out of the last meeting and some of the discussions we've had. Solomon, if you want to add anything further.
We've had to unfortunately lose all of the plantings we had in the front because of the mountable curb as a requirement from your fire chief. So that's really the biggest unfortunate side effect.
But if I can interject here, I heard some public comments earlier about sightline, and our current structure is, the footprint of our structure is probably just a little bit more than half of what's there right now, right, Kim?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's set back closer to the trail, which opens up a complete sight line, making that blind curve no longer blind. So I think that was important to note.
Is the blind curve that's being referred to if you're traveling on Water Street, like, I guess that would be south-ish bound? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah.
This way.
Mhm.
Either way.
The
Either way.
slope of it also makes it sort of hard to see, but, well, yes, the slope of it.
There's a building that's
I'm
right
aware.
here at this time.
But I'm saying the slope of coming from the rail trail down, or coming up a little bit and down, also makes adds to the inability to see what's happening on the other side.
In its current form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna change
Right,
that slope.
correct.
So that would be an existing issue as well. So in addition to the blind curve, it's also that someone coming up and over is going to have to see the person pulling out of the hotel. And I think there's some additional, but we can get into some of the traffic risks that might be different or persistent with these changes. But
Right, and
since the blind curve came up, I'm mentioning that it's also that way blind, you know.
to that point, that northerly driveway, so north is to the right on this plan.
Yep.
That is in only, which limits that friction, so we're not intending to have any exiting traffic at that first driveway.
In only.
In only. So that mitigates it a little bit, you have the out in the middle and then farther to the south to kind of maximize that sight distance.
As far as the process, I don't think we've gotten to the point of referring it to our traffic engineer yet, right? So we will get that feedback.
We have not, and I would imagine we might go through another set of comments as our traffic engineer can focus on some of those traffic related comments. Is it okay, is in terms of the redesign of the plan and the parking?
I feel like the renderings don't show the elevation at all. When you actually go and look at the site, it's not flat like that at all. It's so much steeper. Which,
Steeper
yes,
in what way?
the embankments around, if you look at the
That.
way this is done, the way this is pictured here makes it look as though it's almost flat.
Look at the second page and then these are all the contour lines. You
Yeah.
can see it on the second.
I'm looking at the
I mean, I think
picture, but no, I'm just saying, it's a very extreme site. And it's what's so difficult to imagine, I think, is the pedestrian traffic, since there's no sidewalk on Mohonk. There's no provision for a sidewalk, going around the curve, coming from the rail trail around to the front of the.
We do have a sidewalk.
You have a walk in there now?
Yes, we do.
So maybe we can kind of walk through the set of issues. You want to stay with sidewalk for now? Is that one?
Yeah, I
we
mean,
can discuss that.
so difficult.
So I guess I'm looking at this plan that was recently provided as an update. And I see the idea of proposed sidewalk, but it's hard to tell what the continuation of that sidewalk is in the plan, whether it seems to die at the curve before the first opening. Is that accurate?
It would likely make it up to.
Right.
And the thing at the bottom, where does it end?
It ends right here, so.
Oh, so
It
yeah,
would not go all the way down and around. It would, you could cut in.
it doesn't go up to the rail trail.
Yes,
Yes, it does.
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
All right, that's not.
So someone exiting the
I
hotel
don't.
on foot, they would walk on Water Street until such time as the sidewalk is available?
No, they would go.
No, they'd walk through the parking lot, right?
Walk through the parking lot to the entrance of the sidewalk, then walk up to the sidewalk to the rail trail.
So that's an entrance to the side, and this drawing, there's no, that's an entrance.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right there.
So this here is what? It's
So
not
this
a
is-
mountable curve.
That's not the mountable curve is over here. Individual, if they walk out our front door, would walk there to this sidewalk, and then up to the rail.
Yes.
That's better, sorry.
And is it as narrow as it's drawn here at that turn, or is that something that we're gonna adjust?
No, that has to be adjusted.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They're saying that this is the exit to the, so there's a theory that your operating procedure is gonna be that all people leaving your property are gonna funnel their way into that corner of the property in order to access a sidewalk.
No, two access points to the center of town, walkable from the rail trail and then also from that sidewalk.
Building in the building.
There is a connection to the rail trail.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. Here. See this right here? That right there, that's one access to the rail trail. And then into town. Or people can go through the front, up the sidewalk, the town. I know this really,
And do you believe it's likely that the traffic the traffic flow, pedestrian traffic flow is likely to walk on Water Street? Because
I would think.
if they're coming out of the building, where's the main entrance?
I think the majority of the people that are staying with our hotel are not going to touch their cars. Walk out the back side of the property, up onto the rail trail. And then I think, less than half the people will use actually the
And it
sidewalk.
will certainly be part of our procedure to give them a way to walk into town when they check in.
Sorry, but I can't figure out where it's the main entrance of the hotel.
Sure. This is right there.
No sidewalk now, but they're gonna put one in. Right.
And then this is the lounge area. These are corridors down.
You also have the renderings that kind of depict that as well.
Yeah, on the other side, there's a sidewalk, but there's no sidewalk right now on the same side of the street.
Correct, that's
And I've been thinking about, it's hard for me to like visualize what you're gonna be doing with the water as well. There's the culvert that comes down and you're not covering over that, correct? That stays
Correct.
open.
Right here.
It's open.
You open there and channel right
It's
here.
a small channel, but.
No, they're not touching.
Right,
not touching
but
it.
it's still, it's
I think
still water.
we got to real this
No,
conversation.
we have no intention of messing with the culvert, except preserving it the best way possible.
Okay.
Okay, were there any other questions about the sidewalk or pedestrian access that the board has?
Yeah, I think when we get to another further conversation with our traffic consultants in particular, we just want to, I think this board is responsible for making sure that the design of this location vis-a-vis pedestrian traffic doesn't leave it likely that you are going to have people frequenting the hotel or bar restaurant that are just going to find it easier to walk on Water Street to get there. And then where we already have a blind incline and what's currently a blind turn, it's going to get a little better when the building drops back, and a really dangerous mohawk turn and all that, and 3 different entrances and exits, 3 different curb cuts, that we don't have people walking on Water Street as well, using it as the pedestrian access because the sidewalk is all the way to the north corner. And the rail trail, while I understand the concept of having that be a way out of the property to eventually go back the other direction, north to Water Street or the village, I just don't think it's a fair assumption of human nature that you're going to get everybody to go here and here to leave your property. I think you're going to get a lot of people just flowing right out into Water Street. So I think we need to come back to the idea that, and hear from traffic experts, but also maybe the DOT of how we can make this a walkable location. A safe pedestrian welcome location.
Okay, so I'm just off of your comments, your thought process is the majority of our guests won't walk out this door and go there, or they will do that. Because I mean, even if they're coming down, there's no reason for them to walk all the way down here, right? They're coming off their sidewalk and they're walking directly to the front door, or they're taking their bike or they're hiking and they walk on this easement, will come down into private access to the hotel. Now, this won't be, the public will not have access to this. The public will not be able to access the hotel to the back of the property. No, the public and would always have to come in through the front of the hotel. This would be a key card access back.
Who grants the easement? Is that the hotel? Does the hotel grant the easement? You mentioned.
The Walkill Walker Valley Land Trust.
So if I can interject, the Wallkill Valley Land Trust has the easement over town-owned property. We are going just to connect to that from the back of our hotel to the rail trail. And we still have to have the conversation about that section that we're going to try to connect. It's a very small section because our properties touch. So what we're proposing is to use the same topping that they use, which I think is item number 4, on our side to allow for a continuity to touch the rail trail and for us to have the ability to put in interpretive signage and maintain the vegetation and maintain all of the trees. I did hear somebody comment about trees and us taking trees down. We're not taking any of the Wallkill Valley's trees down. We had no plan to ever do that. We are tree huggers, a bit of tree huggers at heart. We do maintain the health of our trees on the current properties that we own, and we care for them. We want those trees to continue to provide shading. We want those trees to be healthy. We want them to also provide natural habitat to the habitat that's already there. All of that said, if for whatever reason the Wallkill Valley Land Trust didn't want us to top off, put any of our item number 4 on their portion, we would just end it at our property line and let people walk off on a tapered level to which could be a couple of inches to get to the rail trail. If that helps.
Am I wrong to say, I believe there is precedent already with the type of connection you're talking about, Jesse, with Zero Place?
Exactly.
Can we just ask one very small question?
I'm sorry, we can't entertain questions at this time. So does that resolve the issue of, or does that wrap up the conversation about pedestrian access and sidewalks? There are a few other things that we need to get to here.
Is there other things related to the new design related to traffic flow around the changes? Because I have one big question. If I understand it, then I'll be able to figure it out. I think we're going to return to this pedestrian question, but we'll leave it right there.
Yeah.
So I was trying to understand, because I was also some time ago witness to the new paint lines that were drawn on Water Street and Plains Road. So what I'm trying to understand is, are the roads and the intersections between Plains Road, Pencil Hill, Mohonk, and Water Street, are those roads, the proposed width of those roads now different? And if they're different, can you help us understand where they're more narrow versus where they're wider?
I will refer to the plan that's in front of you.
And just to also interject here, we did go through a couple of adjustments on those lines with Blue Highway Superintendent, and actually, you know, the road. I'll let you speak to this, Solomon. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that the reason I'm asking this is because I think it has implications for the passage of traffic safely, whether it's improved or harder because of widening or narrowing, and whether that question of whether a pedestrian who chooses to walk down Water Street or these other streets is more or less likely to have a safe passage while walking on the street because of the changes in the width.
Solomon, before you start, I just want to preface this conversation by one thing. The board may already know this, but I'll just emphasize it. The 4 roads that meet there, Plains, Pencil Hill, Water, and Mohonk, all of them have stop signs at this location. So it's effectively an always stop. So everyone, no matter which direction you're coming from, has to stop. So we tried to take that into consideration when we came up with this plan so that we limit the friction. It is a uniquely shaped intersection, no doubt about it. And there's limited ability for us to change that for the better because we don't control all the frontages. So we tried to work within the site to come up with the most thoughtful flow. Solomon, go ahead, take it. I just wanted to preface it.
The dashed line that you see here is the existing edge of the road. Okay. Every time I show a proposed, and I will show an existing. So you have an existing width right here of 20.6 feet, and we're proposing 23.5 feet. So we're widening the road here. Here, we're narrowing it down a little bit for the sidewalk. Part of the reason why this looks so weird is because we have last minute changes. The designs from the requests from Blue and Corey, thank you. All of those conversations changed how things were working up here. We've re-widened it up here. I can't re-widen it and have a sidewalk. I just can't. We gotta pick our battles. I was coming all the way down to here with the sidewalk. I'm entertaining the idea of coming this way and having parking spots squeeze in. I don't know. We haven't gotten to all those little details, but on the plan, you always have an existing and a proposed.
So in this case, the proposed is 37.5. The existing was this additional sort of 8-10 feet wider.
Which is, so 8-10 feet, that puts us at 45 feet wide.
Right, it's a convergence of two roads. Yeah, okay, I got it. Thanks. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, were there any other questions that the board had about this new update, this new plan? Anything that wasn't clear? Okay, if not, then I wonder, Emily, if we should go through all these items outstanding items from Ashley's memo.
Yeah, we should. We should also go over the memo from Bernier and Larios. So whichever order you want to do that.
Yeah, I was trying to pull that up. Do you have that available?
Is that the town engineer?
Village engineer, yes.
Village engineer, okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I believe that the village engineer did have an opportunity to review this, correct?
He did, and we have a letter from him.
Great.
Did you receive that?
I did not.
Okay.
Not for the latest.
This is from March,
Oh, from March.
but I don't think you've been here since then.
March 9th?
Yes. So you do have it?
Yes.
Okay. You haven't been here since then, right? Okay. I only started here in May, so. Don't worry.
We've been working away at trying to get, some of these boxes checked, these important situations like emergency service and the highway.
Yeah.
So but it seems that there are still a number of the items in this letter that are not yet addressed in your plans. Is that right?
Most of these items should be addressed unless I'm not, I don't have the letter in front of me, so I can't really speak to that. I know that our engineer was in touch with the town's engineer, correct?
Can you go through each one and tell us which ones are and aren't addressed?
Well, I'm happy to read them one at a time if you like.
I mean, I'm not sure that is necessary, but if there are any there that are,
I can go down really quick.
Okay.
All existing and proposed utilities shall be shown through the proposed parking area. We've shown on the plans that we are moving water main into the streets. We show all the other connections. The stormwater control has not been done yet. It's a lot of work. If this changes in any way, all that work is garbage and we have to start again. So until we have something we know where we can work with, we want to wait. Same with sanitary sewer connections, elevations and all that. That's all gonna have to come later. Disinfection and pressure testing of the water system. I mean, we're talking about hotel design. I don't know that we're gonna get into those details yet. Am I correct? Reduced pressure zone, again, water design. Please provide details for the proposed retaining walls and stairways. Once we have a site that we agree on, we will provide all of those details necessary. Turning radii for all delivery vehicles in Plains Road and Water Street intersection. Also provide details for vehicle movements at the loading zones. We offered that plan right there. I assume that that was kind of covering the issue of large trucks coming in. If that does not cover it, please let us know.
Does it address the loading zone or, I mean,
We don't have a loading dock.
okay,
There's no dock.
where would delivery trucks be?
Right in the front of the building.
So through the main entrance, they would just pull in similar to the large truck that's shown on.
The main entrance, and then there is another little entrance right down on the south side, correct? South side of the
Correct.
building.
Correct.
Down, sorry.
Right.
South end is also.
Right there. So, cool.
And if a truck is there to make a delivery, there's no ability for any other traffic to pass.
Well, you can go out this and exit, right? This is an enter and
I think we should see, I think what they're asking for is, we need to see
Right.
like what happens when a delivery truck is there and how does any other flow happen?
yeah.
Delivery truck here,
All right.
nothing else, nothing in that here. Pretty customary to see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Sidewalk and curb concrete design strength shall be 4,000 PSI. That's a pretty engineering design. We'll have that in the final. A plan view of the sidewalk and curb detail. Again, I'll have that in the final. Traffic control for all work within the village right away shall be the responsibility of the owner and be accepted to the superintendent of public works. That's a detail for traffic control at the time of construction. No construction, parking, curbing, etc., shall take place within the village right of way. Well, the right of way being the center of the road, 20 feet off the center, is that correct? Am I understanding the right of way, the village of New Paltz correctly?
I'm not 100% sure, but that's something we can check.
I mean, sidewalks gonna have to be there. I've got no choice. I don't know where else I'm gonna put it along the road. I mean,
That's in
there's.
the village, yeah, that's in the village right away.
Right, okay. Well,
Which is
we will,
standard for sidewalks, public sidewalks. to
Right,
be in the
right.
right there.
we'll consult our engineer about that, but that seems okay.
Then they talk about the water main, which presents a problem for the maintenance. We've moved it into the road so that it's no longer underneath the parking lot, as you can see. And then the last point, the Department of Public Works shall be contacted a minimum of 48 hours in advance of any work within the right of way. We can meet all of this.
Okay, thank you.
Want me to go through these?
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm not sure how these were communicated to you, but these were some of the comments from the previous attorney, so I wanted to make sure that you were aware of them. So we need a narrative regarding the special use permit criteria for the hotel use. Do you have these comments?
Yes. Rich,
Okay.
Rich Olson is also on the line here and has provided, right, Rich?
I had sent the narrative through our engineers.
Which I forwarded to you over the weekend.
Good. It may not have made it into the folder
It
yet. So
it
we
was
have
a
that.
late submission.
Okay.
But yes, I
So you
did
just
submit
submit
it.
the narrative. Okay. The loading spaces, we already talked about the code requires you to show the loading area, so we just discussed that. The lighting plan is not included.
No, again, until.
We're not there yet. Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
there's so much work to
Okay.
do those things.
Yeah. The applicants indicated they would submit a drainage study.
Same thing.
Oh,
Once
that-
we know where the building is and we're happy with the way it looks, we'll be able to do all that engineering.
Okay, we can ask our engineer, but I'm not sure that we may need that before we get to all the details.
So the chicken, egg.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Um,
I think once we know where the building is, where the sidewalk is gonna be located, and the parking, and we're agreeing on what we have proposed in the site plan, you know, I think it's gonna be very easy for us to put in the drainage plan.
Also, we're not changing the amount of impervious cover by much.
Okay, but yeah, okay. It's just.
Plus, I don't know if you guys realize this, but this roof is also a living roof, so that's.
Yeah, we're gonna just need a drainage plan, so.
Yeah,
which
that'll be
work
part of
means-
it, sure.
Yeah. Good. And then work outside the property lines on village-owned property. Is there still work, there are things occurring off the property, right? So.
Lose the property line, yeah, so like over here. A little bit of work. No.
Okay. And have you had any discussion with the Board of Trustees yet about working out on the villages? Is it just in the road right of way? Is that what we're talking about?
Jesse, have we had any conversation
Yeah.
with the? We have.
We have had conversations. I think there were two major hurdles for us, and it was to discuss with Highway Superintendent Blue how the road was gonna be affected and how public utility was gonna be affected. So we came to some solutions on that. And then it went from Blue's office to emergency service with Corey as the fire chief. And he had some comments, and we've adjusted our plan to allow for emergency services to easily access this property. So from there, you know, we got through those two major concerns. At this point, to get to the next one, we had to get through that.
Okay, so that addresses the road issues, but what about on the rail trail side? Is there construction on village property on that side?
So the construction that we're talking about on the village property would be from our property, where you see that's the north side, right? Closest to the Water Street Market.
Yeah, on the north, yeah.
That's the north side, right? So half of that sidewalk is on our property, and then the other half is on village property. To get to the rail trail. So that has to be agreed on still.
All right.
Okay.
And then there was also the issue of the property ownership. Is the property owned by Water Street Trails LLC? I think the forms were signed. We can get those forms corrected, right? They weren't signed on behalf of Water Street Trails LLC. That's just a detail we can.
Yeah, if you want to send me those forms, I'll.
Okay.
Actually, I think I did sign off on that, but we'd be happy to do it again.
Well, they were signed, but they weren't signed on behalf of the LLC when I looked at the file. I think that's what was requested.
Okay. If there's a form that you would like to extend to us, we'd be happy to get it signed off on.
Great, so I think that was all of the comments we had from Ashley. do we feel like we're at the stage where we could refer this to some of our consultants, like our traffic or?
Yeah, as far as the peer review, the board did declare itself lead agency, and so our next step, we'll be going through the EAF part two. But you may want to get comments from your consultants going into that.
Yeah, I think we're close, but I think if we look at, it sounded like, Solomon, there's some pretty like game time things that went into this plan. And so this might not be the one that, I know, but I'm saying there's some very recent things that there's some very recent things. So it sounded to me like maybe this doesn't represent the version you would want to send to our engineer.
No, I would like to have the sidewalk detail at, it's not wide enough. We know that. There's not a lot other things that I, maybe change the way this works right here. That parking spot is pretty much inaccessible right now.
Oh, is that a parking spot?
Yeah.
I was literally doing the numbering. I can only count 31. I've done it like 4 times, but that's one. So that 9 by 9 foot times 22 thing that's labeled, that's a parking spot. Okay, that's 32.
And then there's another 9 by 22 in front of the building on the south end.
Okay.
There's a total of 33 parking spaces.
Yeah.
Actually, forward.
So I think that if we wouldn't want to send this to the engineer.
No,
So we might want to.
I do need to make a few corrections, but if we're comfortable, I can make those corrections and then.
I think we're on board with that, and we could just make a motion to refer the amended site plan to our consultants so we can move forward with seeker. Is that?
Yeah, well, which consultants do you think we need on traffic and engineering?
I wanted to make sure before the traffic, I wanted to make sure the February 2nd, 2023 traffic plan is the most recent and complete submission.
The traffic study,
Yeah.
it is, yes, the rooms have not changed. The only thing that wouldn't be reflected in there is the flip-flop of the parking. We'd be happy to update that in the report too, just so everything talks to one another. But in terms of room count, traffic analysis, that has all stayed the same.
And as an engineer on this, do you have any thoughts about the fact that the data was collected on December 1, as opposed to a time of year in which this neighborhood sees a lot more visitors and traffic?
Sure. So whenever we count off season, let's say, we seasonally adjust to deal with that, because it's hard, when we start a project, we'd love to start it in September or October. We don't always have that luxury.
Yeah.
So what we typically do is we look at DOT season adjustment factors. They publish them for the whole year, and you seasonally adjust based on that.
Are they community specific?
They're not New Paltz specific. They are urban, suburban, rural, recreational specific. So in this particular case, we would apply the most applicable and then adjust it. These roads are not even close to being at capacity, where even if you were to adjust it twofold, you'd have enough capacity in these roadways to deal with traffic. We could look at that a little bit more closely if you'd like. We're in a good time of year, obviously, to supplement with some additional data if that's needed. That's kind of our approach when we start something in a month that isn't favorable for an outdoor community. But your point's well taken, totally.
It sounds to me like the board might want to see some more showing of the pedestrian flow, right? So it's not just the traffic flow, but the pedestrians, the bicycles, how they're gonna flow on and off of the site. I mean, it's kind of confusing. Even in the rendering, it looks as if there's an entrance like midway through the building onto the rail trail, but that's not actually there, right? So
Patio.
this right here. This is a detail.
Yeah, that's an old rendering that's been
Okay.
taken out. That right now is closed off.
Okay.
The renderings were updated. And then, and they're also in in your file.
So is that the most recent one that you have?
No, if you were looking at a path through the rail trail fence, that is not the most recent. The most recent was sent out last week.
Hey, Jesse,
Yep.
I'm looking at Curion's. One of them does have it closed off and one has it still there. So it just, he had his cam 5 shows an opening.
There's no opening.
Well, cam 5 shows it, but.
I hear you, but there's no opening.
He cam 6, you see. That's true.
Okay, I see. All right.
There's no opening. In fact, just so we're on the same page, you can walk out the backside of the building, and then there's a path that leads up to the rail trail and will be ADA compliant.
Over here.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And Frank, before we send something to the traffic engineers, do you have any thoughts about how to satisfy the questions around pedestrian flow and some of the things that don't get captured really effectively in, roadway capacity data and or turn wait time data? Because I think that, like the reality of this location that everybody who's going to come to want to talk about this is going to mention is that people want to go to Water Street, they go in, they can't find a place in Water Street. They come back down, they try to park in the lower Water Street market. That's full too. They come back pulling out again. People are walking in every single direction while they're pulling in and out of these full parking spots, which also have illegal parking because they just park anywhere they can place their car. Like, I think we're going to need to do something that might feel a little less scientific, but your science probably has ways of addressing this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's cameras that record those locations for some period of time and show stop motion, like what goes on here and how we're going to mitigate those risks to pedestrians and car traffic in what's going on there in a busy day. And also how we're going to convey that to the powers that be that control these roadways that might help them convince to say, okay, no more right turns on this one, or different signage here, or, I think we all got to get around that, because if not, there's just going to be an unsafe location and we won't have seen it in the traffic study.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot packed in there, and I appreciate the thought. Number one is the existing condition, is a free-for-all on this site. So we, as the project team, our charge is can we build this project and make it better, for the public? And then there's off of the site that we can't control, but we can certainly work with you to identify some issues and try our best to maybe guide the village in a way that it can improve things. I think with this project, we call it pedestrian desire lines. We tend to walk in straight lines, shortest distance between 2 points. We don't like to be taken out of our way when we're on foot. It just feels like you're losing your time, feels uncomfortable. So we like that, like a dart, as close to a straight line as you can. So I think in this particular project, if we can convey to the resident, to the guests rather than residents, that their connections to the rail trail are simple and easy, that will help solve the perceived impact of this project on pedestrian safety. If we can make it, foolproof, that when you come out of this building, there's a rail trail or there's the sidewalk that's going to lead you to the rail trail, and not provide obstacles for those pedestrians to have to deal with. And I think the idea of a pedestrian flow plan, just simply, and it could be some signage, it could be some markings, it could be very well thought out doors from the hotel that lead you directly on the rail trail, so there is no guessing game. I think that could help address some of your points. The underlying situation where people are coming here that are not associated with the hotel, that's going to be a little trickier to solve, but we're here, we're happy to work with you to get to the end zone as best as we can, understanding that we're limited because we're just the applicant. But we can certainly try to control our site as best as possible.
Thanks for hearing that.
No problem.
Yeah, I think that was a great suggestion. So I guess do we need any updates to the traffic report, given these changes before we send it to our consultants or?
We want revised plans, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Once the plans are,
So-
I think we can let them
So
react
that
to
will-
what we see,
Okay,
and then it can bring us back to a request, instead of having you do something for us and then do something for them, let's pull together and see if there's more. to do.
right, yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like we have what we need to do the seeker, part 2 at our September meeting. But I think I need a motion to refer this to the
Yeah.
consultants, right?
So
So,
how soon do you think you'd be able to get us the revised plans?
Relatively quick. We're Tuesday, probably by end of week.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
So we'd have time then to get it to our engineer and get comments back before the September meeting.
yeah.
One question of the board regarding the traffic, you would raise the idea of seasonality. So oftentimes you run into an issue with summer, where when we count in summer and we look at data in the summer, the criticism is that, well, schools are out, right? So is that a concern here? We don't want to supplement this report with August data if the concern is going to be, well, schools were closed when you counted. So if this is important, and maybe it's better to wait until DTS does a first review, if that timing brings us to September, we can always supplement with data in October and catch the fall Hudson Valley peak, which I think is a reasonable time to do additional data. Schools are in session. I just want to talk about timing because I don't want to miss an opportunity in the summer if you think that's important.
Yeah.
I also don't want to get the criticism of school not being in session. So it's always a give and take around this time.
But you also,
It's very community specific. Yeah. Jesse, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I know you definitely took, higher season into consideration based on the time that you actually did this. So there's that as well.
Right.
You mean by the adjustments you were describing? Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think I have that expertise. I think that there's a very student-intensive development here.
Right.
Use that term loosely. There's a student-intensive living area here.
Sure.
A lot of cars coming and going.
Which December would have captured.
And which December might have captured December 1, and then, but the fall would capture some combination of the visitors to town for the reasons they come and the students. So I think the fall is probably as good as any time, and that would probably time well with whatever feedback you get from the traffic consultants.
Okay. So it sounds like we won't hold it up. We'll let them do a first review, knowing that we could potentially.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good. I think
Okay.
that's good.
Great.
Gets them going on it. We know that there's going to be a comment letter that we'll need to address anyway.
Okay, in that case, could I get a motion to refer this plan or the revised plan to our traffic consultants, DTS Providence?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. And so then I guess we will come back here for the second week of, sorry, not the same, the 19th of September, our only September meeting, and we can do some of the speaker process then with this report from our traffic control. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
So we have to go.
About the last.
That close to me.
I just. I gotta go to work. That's terrible. I'm working 11 PM to 9 AM.
Together.
No, I think Rachel was saying she made.
Yeah, there were, as the minutes then earlier in the meeting, I wrote up the two. The pervious pavement, yeah. Yeah. Pervious pavement.
Oh, she made some.
Yes, all right.
No, it's all good.
Sorry, I just can't, I can't use.
Okay. PB 2302, 145, North Chestnut Street. So since you were last before us, were there any changes, any updates that you'd like to just discuss?
You could start if you want to discuss the plans.
So we really haven't done a lot of changes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Ken Casamento from LRC, the design engineer.
Frank Joseph, Craig Manning, traffic engineer.
Dominic Albano, Whitman, Ostman, and Hannah, attorney.
So we haven't had a lot of plan changes. We've been working with Dennis in his office and the sewer plant. We understand the changes that are now proposed over here. So we've talked to him about how we're going to connect, so we have no issues with that. Connecting our private pump station to the gravity system that would go into the town or village's pump system in that area. So that's the primary focus. We have been in front of the ZBA for the two entrances, as you know, required for building fire code. That's why they're there. Frank's been working with the DOT to permit those entrances and go through. So we've been back and forth and giving them the data they needed, which was probably the biggest change. And I don't remember if you've seen it or not, is the consolidation in some of the entry on at the car wash. So instead of that being wide open all the way into the site, so the car wash is going to have a kind of like a stop, then they can make a right and then get to the entrance to get out. So they can't just drive catty corner across that 60-foot area that's there now.
Is that on your property or on their property?
It is on their property, and we've worked with them for an easement across it and to do the work. That's this area right in here.
Right, I see that.
Yep. We are working on solidifying those easements and documents. Max has talked to them and they're in agreement and understanding of what needs to occur there. Not a problem at all for them.
Okay. So sounds good.
Do you want to ask the question or do you want me?
Oh, sure. As you guys know, we got some comments tonight, and I was wondering if you wanted me to address anything specific or if you had any questions for us.
Yeah, I think, let me see.
I have a jotted list myself too, so.
Yeah,
if there's something in
I think
particular.
if you wanted to like go quickly through the list of things, any inaccuracies you wanted to correct, then I think getting that on the record would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Just to start off, as you already know, we've been before the ZBA and for the northern and southern setbacks. So those are the only variances that we've required for this proposed project. So the concerns related to density, parking size, I believe he recommended an increased height. The projects within the confines of the MBR district's bulk regulations. As for affordable housing and just housing in general, we are providing what's required by the zoning code for affordable housing. I believe it's 10% and it should be 7 to 8 units. Is that right? Okay, just want to confirm. And also he addressed issues related to walkability and bike paths. As you know, we've allotted a specific amount of space for a bike lane to be proposed by the DOT, which is at the discretion of the DOT. And we're also providing access to the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail, which will be a pedestrian access for the village to use. So those things have definitely been taken into account when we've designed this project.
I'm sorry, could you just clarify the pedestrian access to the rail trail? You said for the village to use?
No,
So I
it's
thought
not-
they could
it's
use the
not.
rail trail.
It's not open, as we said
Oh.
before, because it's private property. The owners don't want everyone walking through. There's a legality to that through there. We're producing a connection here. If someone walks through, that's fine, but we're not opening it to public parking for people to access like it is down at Bosse's down the street.
And at the 137 project, you're not.
Correct. No.
But
Yeah,
that
no.
does have the public, so I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
Right,
sorry.
It's not.
I
that's-
misspoke.
Yep. We do have, if I can jump in.
Yeah, sure.
So we do have a pedestrian connection across the front. We've worked to move that around as well with both Frank's office and DOT and your office, worrying about concerns over the turns, which we saw at the intersection for Zero Place. So we've done a lot to really kind of bring that together as best we can. The location of the building was something that we've done a lot of working back and forth prior to getting to hear of it. And we've felt that, based on the MBR zone, not having parking in front of the building was more appropriate than pushing the building way in the back and having big parking fields here as we come into town. Garbage is all internal, so that's one of the nice components of this building. There is no external dumpsters, there's nothing like that for there. We are flush almost right across the street with Montague. The intersections is aligned as we can get it, and the DOT has reviewed that, and Frank can comment on that as well. We've taken what the existing stormwater through the stormwater design and reduced all of the storm events through that. We've actually been talking with Dennis and recently on that, and we're giving him the SWIP to finalize now that we've got some of the details together with him. So that's all going to his office for his final review as well. One of the important things that was brought up with regard to the sewer, just in general, Bosse's is connected with some form of both force main along here. The exact location is unknown, according to what we understand through Dennis, but it is connected to the existing village system over here. We've went out with Blue and we've looked, there's an existing force pump station that is here for the old Agway that we're going to basically disconnect and remove and putting our own in here and connecting to the gravity in front of the car wash where it does now. Dennis didn't see any concerns with that. The pump station itself needs its own repairs and sets of repairs. And obviously there are some contributions and things like that that we'll end up working out how we do that based off flows and things like that with both ourselves and the other developments that will occur there.
One other thing to
Yeah.
add, just to reiterate that Jason Anderson, the architect on the project, has been through
Yes.
various HPC meetings and has went back and forth about the design and how it's integrated both the community characteristics into the design and gone back with colors, I guess like specific features as well. And they've come to the conclusion of the design now, and they've also given their approval to your board of that they're satisfied with the design.
I guess the only last little piece, and then Frank, you probably have something to chime in too, but with regard to the wetlands in the back, we've worked with your environmental consultant to meet the requirements and provide some treatment. We also are looking to enhance that buffer with landscaping and things like that within those areas.
Just out of curiosity, do any of the apartments, whatever, have their own like little terrace or anything?
There are none on this project. There is this whole area here is kind of a community garden, not garden, but lawn area in the center. There are internal bike racks. I do believe one of the things that we should add and can add is an external bike rack out front, specifically because there are stores here, so someone could park there. which we did not account for, but we will add to the plans. It was a good comment to add. But there is internal parking bike racks set up for the residents of the facility.
So just as an FYI, the reason I asked that question is because we were chatting with a couple who want to move to here. And we were saying, oh, well, wait, there's this building, and I didn't have enough detail to be able to tell them, but the first thing she said is, will we have our own way to be out,
Sit outside.
deck? or something
There isn't one
like that?
proposal.
I would let her know.
I have a couple questions. One actually, I think is a good one that was brought up in the comments. And I wanted to also mention first that the types of comments that come from a person that is a professional planner, could be things that have to do with not whether the building and its features meet the code, but whether the building and its features are progressive in the ways that someone who is a planner thinking about usable cities and towns and thinking thinking ahead about what we imagine this community, that part of our community to be at some point, so it's not, we know that you've met the code, except for some areas of variance, but it doesn't mean someone like that might not have some valid thoughts about it. And so I appreciate you responding to all of them. I appreciate you deferring to the code, but also we're here also to think about, well, maybe it could be better and how might we influence that? One small thing is that it was a coincidence that Zero Place happened to have a bus stop and then could integrate that into its design. And I don't know what the nearest stop would be considered by 145, but we can just maybe leave that as something we might look into and figure out whether there's a UCAT.
We'll reach out to UCAT and see if they would create one here, especially with the 135, if there's some spot in here that would make sense.
Yeah.
I was involved with the bus stop prior to Zero Place when it was the park and ride.
Yeah.
That's how that got created and why it was there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And so this would be an opportunity to place one if we want to make sure it's transit friendly. And then I had one question. I'm getting confused with 137, 145, but I think that the parking allotment that you've created does have, even at peak demand, something in the range of like 15 or 20% more spots than required. And given our interest in, preservation of wetland and the green areas that are there, minimizing surfaces, impervious surfaces, and aesthetic, I'm wondering if, and I've seen in some other proposals, this idea of land banking those excess spots and and assessing whether the project was actually going to demand the number of spots that were required or even exceeded, and then coming back to it at some point, and whether that's a consideration you've had.
So I'd love to, you would talk to the parking component of it, and I'll happy, I do it a lot on projects with land banking. Overall, Frank can talk to the total parking as required and what we feel based on demand. We are, and I thought we were closer on demand.
On the Saturday, the weekend analysis, we are much closer, if not right on 105. Look, this is it's based on a conservative analysis, though. A lot of these buildings that serve as the source of data for a lot of the parking analysis that we do don't have the generous rail trail connections always. So you might get a family of families or people here who are less car dependent than your average apartment dweller by virtue of the bus, the connection to the rail trail, things like that. That goes to your point of, hey, maybe we do a wait and see. I do think that we're pretty close though, where I think we have to consider the cost associated with undoing the land banking and the disruption. So that's your ball.
What if this is going to sound really bad. I can't read my own thing. It's too small. What is the requirement for per code though?
At peak weekend, it's 105.
Right.
And you have 112.
Right.
Well, we had 112
when we had the street parking.
But
Oh, it's come down.
Right.
Well,
I'm looking at the memo.
We've always had 105.
Right.
Well, we actually had 104 and then 8 on the street for
Right.
112. We removed the 8 on the street and we said, can we find one additional space? We found it for 105.
Yeah, the required parking is 104 per code. And we're at 105. So we're only one space over. We're not that far over. And that 105 comes through Frank's parking analysis, not the code requirement of strict bedroom units and counts. And so if the board felt they would be interested in that, we can look at it. The complexity of that becomes twofold. There's a trigger point. So we would want to enter into an agreement with the village to say, what is the trigger to being able for us to build it, whether it's our choice because we feel our lots are filling up or we can't sell for tenants because they have 2 cars and we don't meet the demand on a weekend, or we're having problems with commercial space. Or the village drives by and goes, you guys are too full and you're now bleeding into people parking in front of the car wash. We want you to build it. So that's usually an agreement that's kind of entered in, which again, not a problem. We would want it designed, engineered, and done so that there is no re-review. It's just identify these 12 or these 10, come back and build at a later date. If you were to look at that, my question to you would be, per code, then we wouldn't technically meet the requirement of what was built. And I wouldn't want to force us into a variance situation.
I have to
get
admit, the
that.
origin of my question was when the street parking still
Correct.
existed in the memo, the older memos indicated that
We
we
had
might have
over.
had us up to 20% excess on a light day. So, but
And that makes total
starting to
sense.
say that maybe that's not.
Yeah, I mean, if you think it's a good idea, I can read it again, but I would think that if they're designed and ready to go, but they're just banked until that could still meet the requirement.
Yeah, the thing you don't have there is the luxury of any kind of other parking alternatives. It's not like there's street parking where people could flow into, there's not other retail, it's just like.
There isn't that off-street other market where someone's gonna walk to. You know what I mean? Really, yeah. I mean, maybe future development, they're not gonna park at BOCES and be walking down the street to us. Do you know what I mean? They're going to drive here or they're going to be biking or walking here.
Thank
know
you
what I
for
mean?
considering.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a shame because I think in the future when the NVR is more fully developed, you're gonna have a lot more people walking between these properties and using the commercial, tenants and other people's buildings and stuff, but.
My only comment to that would be, and I just put it back to what you said is, then at that time, hopefully those other developments, you can reduce their parking because we have an abundance of other parking available. You know what I mean, in that area. So that, it might not be our property that has it, but the next 2 developments doesn't have to hit the footprint as much with that opportunity.
Yeah, and is it true that there's, maybe I'm just not looking at the right plan, but is there any landscaping in the parking areas as they are configured now?
Landscaping?
Yeah.
Yes.
Trees or.
Yeah, so Frank's just bringing up a great point. We are using porous pavement here also as a green stormwater treatment practice. So the aisles here on both sides are full porous pavement parking lots. So they're full underground stormwater treatment system, as a green practice as the code allows us essentially, other than surface treatment.
Yeah.
So, and for landscaping, we do have a row of trees down the middle.
Okay.
That is split the lot. And then we do have trees on the side as well. And we've been working because our in-house landscape architect, because of the porous, designing those to have tree wells with protection so that it doesn't integrate into the porous, but uses this water as a feed for the trees. For the roots to grow vertically than horizontally.
And then I just,
Sure.
the rail trail,
Yes.
somebody living there and wanting to go to the rail trail,
Mhm.
they come out and they go back.
They walk straight across and into the
Walk
back.
straight.
Yep.
And then there's no fence, there's no
There's nothing.
gate,
Nope.
there's no nothing.
Nope. Nope, nothing there to prevent someone from the rail trail walking in and coming to one of the things here, which just not, because it's private. We don't want to sit and promote people to take up car parking spaces to pull in here and then take them and then hop onto the rail trail. We don't have that abundance of parking inability here.
So wait, I'm confused. So there is a there is a private space delineation? Or
There is no delineation, but it's not something that we're going to enter into a public agreement to say, these are free public parking spaces to come.
Okay.
No one would, if someone on the rail trail decides they want to go to the coffee shop in here and rides across and walks across,
Or
we
if
would hope
somebody
so.
has company,
Correct.
their friend can park.
Can park
there.
and walk and do all that, correct.
Okay, great, thanks. for That, do we, I guess, do we need to do anything right now, with the, preliminary report from our village engineer about the sewer pump upgrade? Is there?
No,
anything to
I
discuss?
spoke with him today about that, and he is in the process of finalizing that.
Okay.
And there's also been some discussions about pooling resources to fund that upgrade, including applying for a grant.
Mhm.
So that's in the works.
Once the cost is like set in stone, then discussions with 137 will go forward, and then we'll let the village know the proposal and the agreement, like if we're gonna enter into developments agreement, which is
Exactly.
what's gonna happen. It's like,
Okay,
Yeah, and just so the board knows, do you want to tell them about the grant that
Yeah.
applied for?
So I don't know the exact specifics, but it's called like Momentum Grant Fund. We just provided a secret narrative to the people providing the grant, and I don't know the exact amount. I haven't really been involved in the process except for kind of giving them an update on what's going on with Secra and
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot.
yeah,
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
want to-
No, once everything is finalized and if we receive the grant, then I can provide like a whole narrative of the funding and what's going to be provided by them.
So the preliminary report, started with a cost estimate, and I guess the grant is a collaboration between the applicants and the village to get 50% of that cost of that pump station, possibly and other things I'm not aware of, but yeah.
Yeah, and of course, like once I speak with the client, I could get more details.
And am I hearing that there's also a consideration that some amount of the cost could be addressed in a development agreement
Yes.
between 137, 145 in the village?
Yes.
Yes.
In addition to the grant?
Yes.
Yes, so I think depending on the cost, if it is what is projected, I had spoken with Charlie after we had discussed this. If it's what is projected, it is most likely be a developer's agreement between 137 and 145. And then with additional funding from the grant with the village. So that is what it's looking like right now.
yeah, great.
And so I think the public hearing we adjourned to September, right?
Yeah,
So-
August.
August.
Oh, is that what we did? Okay.
Well, we won't have any engineering.
And-
Right.
Yeah, so maybe,
Oh,
That's why we had asked the question, because we didn't know, and we also have to get to the ZBA.
yeah, so I'll be at the ZBA next week.
That'll be next week.
Yeah.
Which engineer reports are we waiting?
Just as soon as study.
Oh, the sewer study.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's the only thing, right?
You know what? I just had a blend of.
Yeah, but I'm, the same thing's happening to me. And I
You know what you were talking about, but yeah.
So where we are with the seeker review is that we went through the part 2 and I asked our consultants to draft the sections of the part 3 using some of the material the applicants provided. And I got some of that back, but I need a little bit more. So I think we can have the draft part 3 for the next August meeting.
okay.
Yeah,
For the.
So-
August 15th meeting.
Okay,
You can review that then.
um,
And we should have
So-
hopefully the ZBA decision. by then.
right, yeah, that would be good. So no motions needed this time. We'll just see you at the next meeting with, hopefully have that EAF part 3.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your time. Have a good evening.
All right, and moving on, the 21 AX, new public apartments.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah. I did, yeah, yeah. No, that's,
Because they talk about it.
yeah, I mean, they,
It's in here someplace. Which is why I.
definitely, they do talk about, the impact on the emergency services. So, yeah, we need to.
Sorry to interrupt. The village microphone is muted for the board. The sound is muted.
Oh,
There you go.
sorry about that.
Thanks.
So I don't know that that got captured in this 3.13, but it was that idea that, yeah, you can say it.
Yeah, separation between fire,
Yeah,
ambulance.
and the same level of detail and analysis for each type of service. In light of actually something we just read about the emergency services, the ambulance service, New Paltz Rescue being, a struggling service for the community, be helpful to see that.
Yeah, agreed. Then 3.17 hazardous materials and soils. Add a list of chemicals identified on site into narrative so readers do not need to refer to the appendix. 4.2 impact on surface water and groundwater resources. Please refer to capital environmental letter July 28th, comment 1, comment 2. Capital requests clarification of wetland and buffer identification. So this, I think, was referring that like town versus village
Yeah.
issue.
I think we do need to see where those buffers are, even if.
Right.
The town's gonna want to see that anyway, so.
Where only the 100-foot buffer would be relative to the buildings. If
Exactly.
in the town.
Well, it's detailed in Capital's letter, so we'll give that to you.
Yeah.
And can I just add to that, since I'm here, is that okay, guys? If I just add a comment to that? This is Greg Fleischer. How is everybody today?
Yeah, of course.
Sure. So I don't know if you guys have seen the letter. Did you receive it? A copy of the
Yeah.
letter? Okay.
I don't know if the applicants have seen it yet, but the board has it, yeah. We're
Has
gonna
the
pass it to the applicant.
Have the applicants seen it? I just wanted to make sure if they have or haven't.
No, we haven't.
No, okay. So we were looking over the prior submissions for the project site. And we had commented earlier about you did have some wetland flags on the property boundary that you subsequently removed from your recent submissions. In looking back at our notes for our site visit, we did find wetlands in those areas where those flags are located. So I would just ask if you just revisit with your consultant, to look at some prior aerial imagery as we have, and look on the border of your property in the vicinity of those flags that are no longer included. And just take a second look at that, because it's pretty conclusive to me. I'm a professional wetland scientist as well. So take a look at that, because if you're going to be throwing buffers off of wetlands, 100-foot buffer off of those wetlands on the border of the property are going to extend into your project site. So just better, I'm just saying, as a one consultant to the other, just better to do that now than have that come up down the line. That's all.
Okay.
If you have any questions about that, I'm happy to elaborate too. If you want to reach out, I'm happy to talk about it.
You refer to the south side of the property, would be the new property line on the south side?
It'd be on the north side. North side where you have the wetlands. Like right now, you kind of have one in the northeast, a little corner, right? Like Phragmites, and then as it sloped down to the northwest, you kind of pick up some wetlands on that portion of the property. It's really in between them along that northern property boundary. So yeah, you can see it. If you look at some historic aerials, you can really kind of pick it up on some of those earlier aerials.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So section 4.3, impacts on plants and animals. The northern long-eared bat was reclassified as endangered on March 31st with the reclassification. The USFW issued an updated determination key to better provide guidance and assist in the review of potential impacts. We would like to make the applicant aware that there are new parameters for evaluating potential impacts. Okay. Then section 4.4, impact on agricultural resources. Provide more specificity on past use of the site, e.g. decades ago should be replaced with an approximate date. 4.5, impact on aesthetic resources, provide renderings from additional vantage points on Route 32 further south, looking northward towards the project. 4.6.
Zach, that was the viewpoint you wanted, looking from the
Right.
south going north.
Right, yes, but at the level that a car would be driving on 32.
Before we keep going, Rachel wanted us to include a note about impervious surface, incorporating impervious surfaces. Should we put that under surface water and groundwater, do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good point. So just
You might have heard the prior applicant reference the fact that much of their parking area was going to be impervious surfaces. Maybe there's some, I'm sure you know enough about it, but
We have a lot of experience in it.
great. So yeah, adding a discussion of that. Right. Then 4.6, impacts on transportation. Explain the time period when data was captured, including the year, season, and hour selected. Does the data represent post-COVID conditions? 4.7, impacts on energy utility facilities. Per our village engineer, what we are looking for is a table that illustrates WWTF loadings, flow, and organic before and after your project. You have the data presented in pages 12 to 14. We would just want a table added that summarizes your impact on plant loadings.
So Dennis has been in touch with Stacy about this, and that was the last statement that he made. So, but I think she knows what.
Yeah, it seemed like they were in contact. 4.11, land use and zoning. The zoning map should differentiate between town and village zoning districts. 4.12, fiscal impacts. Please substantiate the data sources or replace with data specific to a student population for the following. Is emergency call volume proportional to population? Is cost of service proportional to number of calls? What is the basis, the projection that police costs will not increase? Calculations of net new residents and new resident impact should be explained in the narrative, as these numbers are fundamental to numerous calculations. And lastly, estimated spending by new residents should use student-specific data.
Does that capture what you were looking for?
Seems like it, yeah. I have one big question here. I'm sorry I didn't raise it in the first case because I didn't quite understand the implications, or I didn't quite consider the implications of the annexation of the property to the village, and the fact that the village would be providing the infrastructure required for water sewer for the development. The question I have around fiscal impact there is, and I guess what I'm asking is of our attorney, and maybe you all know the answer. Is there a place where this board should be considering the net fiscal impact of furnishing that infrastructure as an upfront capital investment versus the, cash flows for many years of the revenue that will be generated by the water sewer services? And is there some requirement at this stage to demonstrate that that will be a net benefit to the village as opposed to a potential net negative financial impact?
I guess we would ask Camoin as economic impact consultant on the job, because I would imagine
you're accurate. I'm not gonna put, words or, facts there, but to the extent that we will be providing improvements to the sewer system itself as part of the project, making connections, making other improvements on our side, off-site as well, in addition to being an actual user and a paying subscriber to the services. I'm assuming that's going to be a net positive to the town and the village.
Yeah.
But I'm not the expert, so I'll let Kamoin provide that backup. But we can further expand that. I kind of think that we may have touched on that a little bit in the economic analysis, but if we didn't, we can add it.
Yeah, I don't think so. And the question would just be whether the community would be concerned that we would ultimately be subsidizing the resultant, the resultant needs of the property with because of its demand on the community resources. So I think that would be an interesting, important fiscal impact.
Sure.
Sounds like you're
Well,
pretty confident.
I'm pretty confident that the size of the investment of sizing certain sections of the existing facility that has already been identified by the city engineer and county engineer consulting on it. Specifically already suggested certain sections of the sewer system that need improvement, which I think that are
the
potential costs associated that we're anticipating contributing to.
Great, thanks.
You did ask them to evaluate in more detail the impacts on the emergency services, and then
We didn't.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, and so the only other item was the issue of project alternatives, and at this time, do we think that the proposed alternatives are, or the DEIS is complete in its discussion of project alternatives? I mean, I think that I and members of the public would like to see an option presented that includes fewer units in a configuration that isn't unrealistic.
Yeah, I think we answered it last time that we'll absolutely provide alternatives that are a combination of the feedback we get through the full public hearing process. So yes, we would plan to include an additional alternative, maybe two alternatives, one that's not presented, which we thought was extreme, but is an alternative under different zoning that is not something that might be desirable of super high density, but also something that is a blend of the input we're getting from the board and an input we'll get from the public hearing process, which will probably be more like the desired alternative to what we're presenting. There'd be less units, different, I think multiple people mentioned a variety of different density buildings. So trying to keep with the same character of a neighborhood design, but maybe blend in some other density, maybe 3 stories, consolidating buildings. Some of those, that was some of the input we took away from last meeting. Right. So until and what I asked last time was, yes, we agree, we'll add an alternative, maybe more. I'd like to hear the rest of the public comments before we go down that path. Or at least present that as, as a follow-up or response to the comments in the final DEIS.
Yeah.
I guess the challenge and we understand, your idea to get the input first and then develop the alternative. But I guess what Zach and I discussed was whether the public would then not have the opportunity to comment on the full range of alternatives. So do you have a suggestion on what process we would go through?
Well, they're still going to get they're going to get a period to comment on the FEIS also. So, I mean, it's not, the DEIS is one step in the project. I would rather myself, just from a period, for 2 reasons. One is from the DEIS standpoint, we've already spent a ton of money developing the alternatives that were identified in the scope, and to go back and now I develop another one at this point is going to probably set us back some time. But more importantly, I'd like to do an alternative that I think is gonna actually end up being, I don't want to speak for the developers, but end up being the project, which is going to be reduced in scale, probably pulled back from the northerly portion to some degree. We've heard that loud and clear. I'd like, from a tactical standpoint, I'd like to do it as mitigation measures, because I think if you do it in advance, we're going to be starting with, well, what are you doing for mitigation? Not this board, but the public. That's my worry, is that you get in this situation where you do a whole bunch of stuff up front because you know that the board wants it, but the public hasn't been involved, and they're like, this is what else, what are you going to do? And we can say, well, we already did it. Like, well, we didn't get a chance to comment on it. That's my worry, is just from a tactical standpoint.
Yeah, and it is true that there will be another round of input once you have the full EIS. I mean, I think I would be okay with moving ahead with the current project alternatives as they are. I mean, with the understanding that this board will have, comments about those, and the public will as well, so.
Well, I can say this, Zach, that I will say, and Emily's in this position a lot with, people she represents. I will say to Tom and to his people that there's going to have to be changes in the northerly section. I mean, that we can read loud and clear. So at least I think Tom and I do. So.
I mean, would you consider putting, I don't want to speak for the board, I'm just thinking maybe put something in the narrative of the alternative section, explaining that?
Yeah.
No problem. But
Framing your position about it.
yeah.
That we acknowledge that this has been an area of concern to the board, and that we, as mitigation measures, we plan on addressing it. Yeah, we can put something about that.
We'll invite the input that you'll get to revise the new.
Yeah, the input,
It's a good
I mean, the input from the board is not going to be far off from the public input as well. I think there's gonna be some things that we brought up in the public process that we're not addressing or hearing yet, that we'll still want to address, and that's the whole point of that. And so we can't can't address those issues we haven't heard of yet. So I think that's more my point. So
Negotiating against yourself.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that's a good solution then. In that case, I think that was all the changes, or all of the suggestions.
If, once you're satisfied with this document, maybe you could vote that this is your final list of comments for us to submit back to the applicant.
Yeah. So could I get a motion to submit this final list of comments to the applicant?
So move.
Second,
All
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that is as amended.
As I just amended it.
Okay.
So we'll send that out. And one question, I know that the applicants planning, what's Zena? Planning consultant?
Engineer,
Engineer.
civil
Okay,
engineer.
sorry.
consultant, yeah.
So she had asked whether we wanted to have the whole document revised. Like, do we want like a additional sheet that adds these items, or do we want the core of the document revised? Do you know what I'm saying? What they want to avoid is printing a whole lot of more copies of this DEIS. But
15 grand for.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess
I prefer not.
15,000 trees.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what I was thinking is we might need the narrative section, which is really only one piece of it. We might need that revised, but we might not need all the appendices reproduced at this point.
Yeah.
I don't have room to store it.
Yeah, I agree. I think just having that one narrative part, would be great.
And then it'd be like an appendix that has all the additional information and.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah, they'll look it updated as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That makes sense.
Great.
So we have to answer the questions in an appendix form, but include a narrative.
A
and-
brand new narrative and answer your questions.
That's-
Do it
Is that
now
what
or
you're
do it
thinking?
after the next meeting?
Do you want, I wasn't totally clear on this. So do we want the narrative to be revised and we want these items to be listed in a separate document or just revise them? Make the changes to the narrative?
Are all of these in the narrative or they're in other sections too?
Oh, I guess some of them are in other sections. So we would need the list of additional appendix changes. Yeah, I guess we need.
We could go down that, we could list we could do the narrative, Zena. You could do the narrative.
Right.
And then Zena could do the narrative, and then we could provide a list of questions, answers, and reference.
That sounds great. Whatever you think is
Zena,
efficient without producing the whole thing.
Yeah.
That was the and.
But some of the items were that we wanted to bring things into the narrative, so we don't want it to only be a separate addendum. I think we need the actual narrative revised.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Is Zena there?
I'm here.
Okay. Zena, what's?
So my thoughts on this is we can take your comment letter and respond to that as a single comment letter so that that becomes the addendum to the narrative. It can also be an addendum to the actual appendices themselves, depending on what information we get back from the consultant, but you would have that one document to refer to for the corrections.
Okay, but I think we're gonna need, and I thought about this after you and I spoke last week, Sina, but I think we're gonna need the actual narrative revised because what we want the public to be able to comment on is one complete narrative document,
Right.
not have to look at the addenda.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so then I suggest that we do it that way, change the narrative. And then the electronic version of any additions to the appendices will show that. And then we can issue just a certain number of copies, if you'd like, for like the public library or wherever the public would be viewing it. But unfortunately, the board members would still have this, half of a revised narrative, but then the old appendices.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that's fine.
Yeah, we don't want to kill forests over this.
Yeah, exactly.
Document.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of next steps, I guess we, at our August 15th meeting, we can make a determination of whether the DEIS is complete.
Oh, I guess we we decided on the list of changes.
Yeah.
So we don't need to do anything at the August 15th. I think
Okay.
we've decided it's not complete and we voted on the list of changes.
Right, okay.
So we
That-
don't need to do that.
That makes
Yeah.
more sense. I thought that was saying we would
Sorry, yeah.
see the updated DAS already.
I was thinking we would need to spend more time on this list, but if we're satisfied with it and you want me to just go ahead with it as revised, we don't need to do this again next meeting.
Yeah, okay. I think
We'd probably be at a September meeting at some point before we get everything done, right?
Oh, yeah,
Probably,
yeah.
we're gonna be at least September probably to get.
Yeah, they're gonna need to do some additional work here. Yeah.
It depends on how quickly we can get the consultants to turn around information, but I've set aside time to try to hammer this out in time for the August 15th.
Let's see if we can get it.
When is the submission needed for the 15?
I don't know if we can
I don't try
put that on.
Friday.
Okay.
Yeah. September.
And then there's no.
Okay, September's good.
September meeting.
Take it, Zena.
The 20th, right?
Okay, September's good.
So we would need it in the house. In advance.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we can do plenty,
Actually, yeah.
plenty of time out of that.
And by the 11th.
5 weeks. Do we need to set a schedule for that or just leave it with the understanding that you'll be back in September with the updated EIS?
Well, we're gonna need to get the updated one and then have time to review it to determine if it's complete, so.
Okay.
Do you?
We'll try and get it, we're gonna, I
Try to get it here before like September.
we'll try and get it here
In a month.
by the beginning of the,
Okay.
so you guys have time.
Great.
Because otherwise it's gonna be, thrown on top of you. with a
Yeah.
week.
We can commit to picking them up and having those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I believe that is everything. In that case, could I get a motion to adjourn? Second?
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.